Good morning, everyone. Please find a seat. This is some kind of skewness in the room, so we can don't feel shy. You can come closer up here. Welcome to this year's RITMO Largo, our annual conference that is not happening every year, but we are very happy to be back again with this. I'm Alexander Jensenius. I'm director of RITMO, for those that don't know this, and
yes, I'm Anna Danielsen, Deputy Director of RITMO.
Yeah. And the nice thing about Largo is that this is what we call our open house. It's our chance to show and tell about what's going on. We will do a little bit of show and telling here from up here, but most of the day will be spent also walking around in the corridors, looking at posters, talking to people, drinking coffee, meeting, etc. So it's important to think about this as a networking event for everyone taking part in this. Also very welcome to those online. We are streaming this throughout the day as well. The people on stream, you will unfortunately not be able to join the poster sessions as such. You can look at the posters though, but it's not so easy with the interaction when you're not physically here. But anyways, feel free to look at the posters online and get in touch with the relevant candidates there if you want. But this is the program. We'll start with a little bit of more high-level thinking and talking from Anna and me. Then we will move on to the cluster leaders of RITMO to talk a little bit about highlights from their respective clusters. Then we'll have a short break, and then we'll move on with the first poster session. And the way this will happen is that we'll split the PhDs and postdocs at RITMO in two groups. So we'll have one group doing poster session 1 and the other doing poster session 2. And then we will start these with what we call a poster blitz in here, which is a 1-minute, 1-slide presentation, followed by physical and posters out in the corridors where you can walk and talk. Then at 1:15, we are very happy to have a keynote talk by Professor Xavier Serra from the Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona, who's also one of the scientific advisory board members of RITMO. And we are very happy to also have other members from the RITMO Scientific Advisory Board present here today, because we have a sub-meeting with them tomorrow. Then after the break, we'll have another poster session, followed by a panel discussion with the members from our Scientific Advisory Board. And that's the story about the program of today. Emergency exits are back there. Toilets are half a floor up, half a floor down, and there's also an emergency exit there. And that's basically it, I think. Okay, now RITMO. Who are we? For those of you that don't know, we are now located in the same building as the Department of Psychology. That's because a good chunk of people in RITMO belong to this department. It's also a good chunk of us belonging to the Department of Musicology, which is physically another place on campus, and also a good chunk from the Department of Informatics. And together, people from these three departments, we make up RITMO as an interdisciplinary center. And we work on this from the topics then of musicology, the study of music, psychology, the study of the mind, and we are particularly interested in the embodied mind as well, and then about technology, the study of arts, crafts, and tools related to these type of things.
Yes, our aim, we started out with a slightly different aim, but we had to revise it. So the current aim of RITMO is to expand our understanding of rhythm as a fundamental property of human life. And we are kind of approaching this theme from two different sides. The first question is, what are the basic structures and features of rhythmic phenomena? And the second, what are the mechanisms underlying human perception and cognition of rhythm? And we are especially interested in the link between these two, because we think it's not how these rhythmic phenomena in the world are structured actually can tell us something about how we perceive them. Yes, these were the 4 focus areas that we started out with. Starting from the bottom, structure, we know that rhythm can be used to structure past events and also predict future events. Rhythm can be used to coordinate interaction. Rhythm also is associated with pleasure in some context, and rhythm may also play a role in how we experience time. You will see that these themes, where they are recirculated in the cluster names and in various contexts, but we will also get back to how they have been revised and expanded a little bit in phase 2. So this was where we started.
And then to study rhythm, we like to say that we do this from the softest soft to the hardest hard, starting with reading and writing books and various types of musical engagements and analyses. We also work with different types of talking methods, including interviews and observation studies, questionnaires of various kinds. We measure things using eye trackers and motion capture, or different types of brain imaging, including EEG, FNIRS, fMRI. We do machine learning of various kinds and also some robotics. And in addition, we also actually have snuck in a little bit of also life science in here with some biological experiments as well. So it's a very large and diverse set of methods and approaches within RITMO. And one of the things that we really find cool is that we are able to explore combinations of these in different ways. So that's kind of really one of the strengths, I would say, when it comes to this. Now, when it comes to RITMO, we're now into what we call the phase 2 of RITMO. We have had a phase 1 that completed a couple of years ago.
Yes, RITMO phase 1. We started out with building up the center. That was actually, I would say, demanding. Getting all the structures in place, getting all the meeting places in place, arenas for discussion, interdisciplinary work. This is from our RITMO kitchen. I think it's from an admin corner, or which has become kind of one of the important meeting points in the center. It's always followed by a food and paper. But then, after some years, the kitchen was very empty for one reason, and that was the pandemic struck, and it was quite challenging, actually, to have so many people coming from all parts of the world to Oslo to do research together, and then ending up in a situation where they couldn't actually be together. So, but we tried to compensate. This is actually from a virtual disputation. The poor candidate is sitting alone in the reading room with the committee on the screen. And we also established various digital formats, but as you can see, there were some hiccups. You are frozen on my end. Maybe internet issue. Hopefully he will be back soon. I assume he might come back. I think we have all experienced quite a few of those. But nevertheless, we actually managed to produce quite good results. Particularly impressed actually by the 474 conference presentations, given that we actually couldn't go to conferences for, at least 1 or 2 years.
But then we managed to get out of Corona, all of us, and got into phase 2, which we celebrated with a big party out in here. Then we have also spent some time during our organization to figure out, okay, how can we best work together? Because moving to phase 2 also meant that we got a new generation of PhDs and postdocs at RITMO. So we sent off a big chunk of PhDs and postdocs, and then we recruited a bunch of new ones, even though there were some overlaps. And this is the current organization of RITMO into 4 research clusters. It's very important that we don't see these as research groups or research labs, as some people do in other centers. For us, these are gravitational points. So everybody at RITMO belongs to one of these, but everyone is also very welcome to attend also other cluster meetings than the one that is their home cluster. So these are have very open doors. This is the current group of PIs at RITMO, and we will hear more about and from them in not so long. But of course, all the recruits are really perhaps the most important part of RITMO in terms of doing research. We currently have 60 people employed at RITMO, and in addition we have guests and students, etc. So this is a large crowd of people coming from many different places in the world. So we have a very international working environment. We also see that we collaborate with a lot of people and send people out in the world as well. So it's very interesting that we, at any point in time, we always get in visitors. And we also have a RITMO blog where some of these visitors write about their experiences at RITMO. So this is a recent visitor from Brazil that left us and wrote some nice things in the blog. We also had another one earlier this year. And yet another one. So these are just 3 examples of probably 100 of people that have come through and visited us over the years, and we are very happy to see how we can learn from our visitors, and also that we can connect to the world in different ways through that. In terms of the organization now, what we're doing, Anna has made this fantastic overview.
I'll not go through every little bubble here, and then you'll stay here for an hour. This is kind of our internal map of what we do, the projects. I think we're especially proud of these gray bubbles here, because all those are people that have completed their PhDs or postdocs here at RITMO. And it's even perhaps more people, actually, that we haven't updated it. We should have done that. Okay, but in order to say something more general about what we do, we have, on top of all these different projects, individual and group projects, we've tried to single out some areas that are what we're working on in phase 2. One big bubble entrainment with the biological, robotic, and ambient environments as focus areas. We did a lot on microrhythm in phase 1. That work is also continuing in phase 2. We have a big bubble focusing on interaction and synchronization. Here there are several topics: social bonding, synchronization in musical performance, also multimodal performance, or how multimodality actually affects these processes. We have a bubble called time and pleasure, where we focus both on how we can be absorbed in time when participating in musical processes, and also on what we call musical fragmentation. How can we actually experience, how do we experience time when the musical material is kind of cut up, reordered, and so on. And then we have a big bubble called prediction and attention, where we in phase 2 have a particular focus on more complex rhythms. Of course, much work within this field has been done on very single beeps or clicks or so on. We want to be a little bit more ecological. And also on neural entrainment. But I should say that people from all the 4 clusters work in all those bubbles. So all those bubbles are cut across the cluster organization. And that's important.
So that kind of brings us to the topic of interdisciplinarity, because we are as bold as having this word even in the title of our center, which is a bit ambitious. And we do work interdisciplinary. I guess we also like to say that we work cross-disciplinary and multidisciplinary, or even transdisciplinary in different ways, depending on the levels of interaction going on. And many people wonder about how we do this. And our approach is really to try to combine people in different ways, and in having not kind of set groups. So that's kind of a cornerstone of our approach. And as you also will see today, later as well, when we will have the poster sessions, we'll also kind of mix people up and try to see how, by putting people randomly together, that can kind of foster new and interesting collaborations. Now, This may be more for the Research Council and other people counting things, but again, we are continuing to increase our numbers of all of these things, so we are extremely happy to see all the results coming out of this. It's not only about the numbers, of course, it's also about the quality of our work, which I think is really, really excellent, and that you will hear more about now very soon. So, with that, I think Anne and I will leave it there and hand it over to the cluster leaders to talk a little bit about each of their clusters and their activities. And again, to remind you about this, these are our 4 clusters, and I think we'll start with Jonna presenting the interaction and pleasure cluster. Thank you from Anne and me.
Right. Hello, everyone. So my name is Jonna Vuoskoski, and I lead the interaction and pleasure cluster. So just starting with who we are. So we have 5 faculty or PIs as part of the cluster. So 3 sort of primary members and 2 faculty members who are also part of other clusters. And we also have 3 postdoctoral fellows and 4 PhD fellows at this moment, and 4 research assistants as well. So this is the sort of core question that at least tries to encapsulate the main goal of our cluster. So what are the processes and phenomena underlying rhythmic interaction and action, and the affective outcomes of these processes? Of course, this is quite broad, so we do have a little bit more specific focus areas. So we are interested in finding out why rhythms make us move, how does rhythm facilitate entrainment and interaction between people, and what are the affective and social outcomes of these kinds of interactive processes. We are also interested in investigating the dynamics of music-evoked pleasure, including experiences like absorption and chills, as well as music-related effort and skilled action. So, for example, how do sort of extremely experienced expert musicians differ from less experienced musicians? And we mainly tend to do behavioral experiments using methods like eye tracking, pupillometry, motion capture, but also surveys and qualitative interviews. And in the past couple of years, we've been doing a lot of concert research as well, so doing actually research in live concerts rather than in the lab. There's the first picture is from the motion capture lab, from one of our kind of behavioral experiments. But indeed, we've been doing sort of more ecological research as well in both classical and sort of popular music concerts. So telling a little bit about this live concert research. So going into the main research themes really of the last couple of years, what we've been working on. So one sort of major or main area is this live concert research, and we've had collaborations with the Danish String Quartet, with the Stavanger Symphony Orchestra, and the Norwegian Radio Symphony Orchestra most recently. And from this collaboration with the Danish String Quartet came actually a whole special issue of several articles from RITMO. So this was this collaboration with the Danish String Quartet happened in Copenhagen. So we had various sensors fitted into on the players, the musicians themselves, as well as the audience members. So the audience members were they had these little pouches around their necks, and they were holding their smartphones on their chest, so we could track their motion, and then they would also answer some questions in surveys in between pieces. And just to give you a little sort of glimpse or example of the papers that came out of this concert in this special issue in Music and Science. So there was one study by Finn Upham looking at this stilling response, how audiences sort of really coordinatedly become still when they're anticipating these more kind of quiet moments in the music. So combining music analysis with this sort of motion analysis. Also, more sort of qualitative or humanistic or philosophical paper looking at sort of these inactive, embodied experiences in live concert settings. Also, like a radically interdisciplinary paper combining these kind of philosophical views with more empirical approaches or experimental approaches, investigating experiences of attention, absorption, and affect or emotion. And also sort of more experimental work comparing sort of concert performances to more controlled or systematically manipulated rehearsal conditions in both experts and student musicians. Another main theme has been music and social bonding. So some of the work during the COVID pandemic, for example, we investigated how people might experience these feelings of social connectedness through attending virtual live-streamed concerts, even when they were socially, kind of physically isolated. We've carried out similar experiments also in more sort of controlled settings, and also in live concert settings. So how do audience members feel socially bonded to performers as well as the other audience members? And another major theme has been music and body motion, and again looking at different contexts, different types of body motion. So for example, when people are just standing still or even being asked to stay as still as possible, how does music still affect their body motion? And also in the context of different types of musical ensembles, of different sizes, or like string quartets, as well as choir singers. So what are the next directions? I should also mention some ongoing works, because of course we're working on things that are not yet published. So there's definitely more live concert research coming out and also happening in the future. We've also been working on quite a lot of social interaction, social coordination, rhythmic coordination research, and we'll be doing so in the future as well. Also investigating social emotions and social cognition in music listening, as well as, again, experiencing these states of altered consciousness like absorption and flow. Okay, and now it's Kyrre's turn from the Interaction and Robotics.
Okay, good morning. Yeah, so I'm Kyrre Gletta, and I'm leading the Interaction and Robotics cluster. So here's an overview of the people in the Interaction and Robotics cluster. There's some faculty members at the top, and then there's postdocs and several PhD students working on lots of different interesting projects. So I won't go into all the names, but please remember them and check out their posters in the poster session, and you'll hear about their interesting research. So in our cluster, we say technical things in a way, or that's our kind of like center of gravity in terms of methods. So we are like a bit towards like computer science and engineering sciences, and we do a lot of machine learning, signal processing, artificial intelligence, these kind of models based on data. We also do simulations, so we like simulate robots or simulate other types of physical processes. We do also have people from biosciences, so we do these mixed projects where there is also bioscience research. rapid prototyping using like electronics, 3D printers, and such to make like actually physical systems, be it robots or more like devices that we can interact with and test. So we do prefer these kind of interactive processes, like iterative processes, where we can build something and see how it works and improve on that and so on. So we have this analysis by synthesis approach, building things and seeing how they behave. So these are like the goals of the cluster, basically to investigate rhythm and motion through robotics and technology. And so we have had this focus on interactive music systems, which we could say that like there's still people doing that, but it has expanded a little bit. So like our current, say, workflow there is like there's interactive music systems, but there's also like multimodal is more important now. So we like do multimodal mappings and multimodal analysis and creative processes in general. And we do have robotic systems like adaptive robots, where we study how robots can be more, say, adaptive, how they can use rhythm and adapt to other robots and to other people. And also on human-machine interaction in general, and also like in particular human-robot interaction, but we also like interact with lots of different types of systems. So to dive a little bit into the first theme of work that we're doing is this multimodal mappings and creative processes. So basically, you could say we have different modalities, different sensory inputs, so it can be a lot of different things, like, for example, some of these audiovisual and other bio data that Alexander has been collecting. It could be motion capture data, and it could, like say muscle signals, for example, or other kind of bio signals. And this also goes down into some kind of analytical process. It could be like an algorithm, could be something simple like signal processing or some complex signal processing, and it could be a machine learning model, so it could be trained on this kind of data. It could be a mapping process where you somehow take some of this data and generate some kind of output. So we also have a project where we have a biomedical pictures of cells that we try to map into sound. So we have this sonification process to try to learn about or understand or analyze images in a different way. And we have had this interesting creative outputs from Benedicte, where dance motion was generated by an artificial intelligence that was trained on real dancing data. So there was some some aspects of humanness into it, but there was also like some kind of creativity and some new unseen moves that kind of surprised people. And well, here's the machine model, but there's of course like humans in here that interact with the output and may then kind of feed back into the input to the system again. So we have this like loop of generation and like interpretation of that and interaction. There are also people looking at how to generate sounds, how to discover new sounds, for example, and yeah, there are lots of different projects on this one. On the robotic side, so we've been interested in like understanding how robots can use machine learning and how they can use artificial intelligence and incorporate some kind of aspect of rhythm to be to get like interesting properties that could be useful also in interaction with humans. So we had this previously. We had this Dr. Squiggle robot, and we want to like study how they can interact with each other and how they like kind of reason about their own rhythm and get impulses from the environment. So we had one project called Corroborees, where we had made like a simple, say, neuronal model of how you could model say generate locomotion, but also like input impulses from external stimuli, such as music. And so then we had some results with this robot that could kind of entrain to the beat that was presented. And more recently, we had the Z-Rob, which was like a drumming system, so a robot drummer that was playing along with itself. So here's a microphone, and the robot like listens to how it performs. And there was this type of reinforcement learning dynamic system where new patterns were tested. So there was some kind of intrinsic motivation in the system, some concept of that. And like new patterns were explored, and there was this dynamic, interesting, evolving process. Then we also have the human-robot interaction. So here we have Marike interacting with the Tiago robot. So her project has been about how to make human-robot interaction more intuitive. So like if the human can understand more intuitively what the robot is going to do, then you can have like a smoother process of interaction with the robot. So you can be more efficient, and it's more like a pleasurable experience. We also had previously, we had Chara making this kind of AI agent that you could interact with in a musical performance setting. So here's from a performance he had where he was improvising and playing, and there were like self-playing guitars, and there he also had this musical AI agent, Kavi, that made responses to what he was playing, and he all had this dynamic process. And most recently, this is from a cluster meeting last week, where Arthur is testing out Pedro's recent prototype of the musical swarm. So like there's a human swarm interaction aspect here that's currently ongoing research. So you can see he's seeing some extended reality in his MetaQuest VR glasses, and he can try to like interact and modify and affect this swarm, and it generates a musical output. In terms of outputs, we do have lots of papers, of course. So papers in different venues, like to the biosciences, to the more like, say, technical IEEE here, and bioinspiration, and computer music journals. So it's a quite broad field of impact. Alexander wrote a book about instruments, and Mojtaba made this robot for drumming. So like when we do make software and hardware, we hope to make it as much as possible open source. So both the software open source and the hardware open source, so that other people can build the hardware as well as the software. And not only do we make open software, like here's the motion gesture, musical gesture toolbox that was made for Python recently, and we also have here Balit explaining in a video how to use it. We also had some years ago now a workshop, so we also have some workshops and such things. As for future directions and what's ongoing right now, so we are now focusing quite a bit on multimodal analysis. So like so in this ambient project, we have measuring the like entrainment to the environment through many different sensory data, and we want to also study more like adaptivity and expressivity in robotic behavior. So we have now hired 2 people in this peer project that is looking at how to make robots more adaptive in interaction with humans. And We also study creative interaction with AI systems, and we hope to make these as embodied as possible. So going maybe from a virtual swarm to a swarm of physical devices that we can interact with. We're working currently with several colleagues in the center on making this proposal for AI networks, like AI center, to propose for funding for that. And we also want to, this kind of like a long-term goal, to have some creative computing education offer for students in our university. So with that, I'll give the word to Anne-Kristin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Anne-Kristin Solbakk, and I will talk about the work of the Structure and Cognition Cluster. So these are the people. We are 4 principal investigators representing psychology, cognitive neuroscience, and engineering. We have 3 postdoctoral researchers, and on the right, our eminent lab engineer, Birger. We currently have 5 PhD students, and also showing our alumni, 3 PhD students and 2 postdoctoral researchers. And we still have continuing collaborations with most of the alumni. So the main goal of our research cluster is to obtain an expanded understanding of how rhythm and our sense of time are constructed in the human mind. And to reach this goal, we study the influence of rhythm and timing on perceptual processes, attention and mental effort, the predictive processes that enable proactive behavior, as well as imagery and illusions. We also have some secondary goals, and one is to develop research methods and infrastructure and share it with colleagues nationally and internationally. And in the long term, we hope that our findings will inform diagnostic assessment and intervention. At RITMO, we have access to special study groups, including musicians, synesthetes, mono and dizygotic twins. And also, due to our collaborations with hospitals in Oslo and elsewhere, we have access to patients with rare neurological disorders or neurodevelopmental conditions such as ADHD. So we have access to a variety of methods at RITMO and Oslo University Hospital. Cognitive experiments yielding behavioral data are typically used in combination with recordings of one or more types of physiological activity. This way, we can integrate different, we can obtain data to integrate different levels of analysis to obtain a better understanding of the phenomena in question. Our projects typically bridge clusters and disciplines and involve people from other clusters to take advantage of our complementary competences. I will now present a small selection of discoveries from our 3 overarching lines of research. The ability to predict upcoming events shapes how we perceive and interact with our surroundings. A topic of key interest is to understand how the brain uses rhythmic information to build expectations and to reveal the brain regions and neurocognitive mechanisms involved. The study by Olga Asko and colleagues demonstrates a key role of the orbitofrontal cortex in predictive processes. Examining patients with focal OFC lesions, they tested the causal involvement of this area in detecting auditory prediction errors at 2 levels of rule abstraction, using a local global paradigm compared to healthy and lesion controls. OFC patients had altered event-related potentials to prediction errors at the local as well as the combined local and global levels. And her findings indicate a critical role of the orbitofrontal cortex in detecting prediction error at different hierarchical levels of abstraction. Another main goal is to understand how mental effort and attention dynamically adjust to the complexity, contextual relevance, and the timing of rhythmic events. Fordal and colleagues studied how lateralization of brain oscillations during auditory spatial attention is influenced by the tempo of sounds. They recorded EEG while participants listened to rhythmic sound streams with different tempo that were presented to the separate ears. A major finding was that brain waves at the beta frequency matched the pace of the attended sound stream more strongly than the pace of the unattended stream. This highlights how the brain utilizes the timing of sounds to direct our attention. And lastly, this line of research investigates individual variability in the abilities that collectively constitute our rhythmic competences. Little is known about the etiology of musical sensibility, which is the tendency to be emotionally engaged by music. Hansen and co-workers examined the architecture of musical sensibility in a large sample of Norwegian twins. They studied the latent structure as well as the genetic and environmental factors influencing individual variability in several domains of musical sensibility. They found a phenotypic higher order structure whereby both the general musical sensibility factor and the conceptually narrower domains were strongly heritable. Additional outcomes I would like to mention is that we are increasingly sharing multimodal data sets from our unique study populations with researchers at other universities. We are also developing new methodology and software, and for example, the toolboxes created by Alejandro Blenkman and co-workers are open source. And we also document this work in scientific papers. We also organize methods workshops. So in recent years, we've had workshops on scalp and intracranial EEG, functional NIRS, and pupillometry. And additionally, we develop open access online courses on these different psychophysiological methods. And since 2022, more than 1,100 people have enrolled in the course on pupillometry. That work was led by Bruno Lang. We have several ongoing and planned projects. So one is on cross-modal temporal perception and illusions of time, led by Bruno Lang. There is one on investigating the neurophysiological basis of urge to move to music, which is led by Tor Endestad. We are investigating roles of different prefrontal sub-areas in time perception and predictive processes. That work is led by me. And we also have the AudioPred project, where Alejandro Blenkman got funding from the Research Council of Norway a few years back, and where the main focus is on revealing the neurophysiological mechanisms of human auditory predictions. And then a recently developed or to be developed project is the combination of intracranial EEG data with artificial intelligence to reveal some of the core mechanisms of cognition. And to realize the latter, in 2025, we will be making a proposal for interdisciplinary convergence environment at UIO. And this is collaboration between RITMO, the Departments of Psychology, Medicine, and Informatics. We're also working on a proposal for EU doctoral networks. And this is based on already achieved seed funding from Circle U European University Alliance. And lastly, we will continue developing teaching that builds on interdisciplinary perspectives and methods. And this is at the heart of the RITMO legacy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ragnhild Brøvig, and I'm leading the Structure and Aesthetics cluster. Initially, this cluster was called Structure and Time cluster, but we wanted to emphasize that RITMO is also very concerned with experiential meaning-making aspects of rhythm. So we changed it, but the time is still very relevant to this cluster. The cluster currently consists of 9 core members, faculties in EI on the top, and then postdocs and PhD, and then alumni. There's 8 alumni, but we also have several guest researchers and visitors from other clusters and from outside of RITMO at our cluster meetings. The core question of this cluster is, what are the vital features of musical rhythm and time? How are they experienced? And why do they matter? The main focus areas are to investigate the structure and aesthetics of musical rhythm and time, to explore rhythmical experiences and practices, provide insights into perceptual processes, meaning-making, and social-cultural context through a focus on rhythm and temporal structures, and focus on the interaction between aesthetic dimensions and cognitive processes. The methods we use are several. For example, musical and audiovisual analysis, performance studies, qualitative interviews, behavioral experiments, computational analysis, and motion capture. And the main areas of focus are very much related to some major research project that I will discuss shortly. In addition, we have individual PhDs and postdoc projects, but these are related to the other larger projects mostly. So one of the larger projects of this cluster is Timing and Sound in Music Microrhythm, led by Anne Danielsen. The Time project has investigated 5 musical genres to explore the relationship between timing and sound in musical perception and performances. Key findings include that perceived timing at the micro level of rhythm is closely related to the sound's shape, and that musicians and producers use intensity, timbre, and duration to convey timing nuances. The project also showed that genre expertise and musical training affect sound perception and timing preferences. By focusing on the impact of sonic feature, the project has questioned traditional music theory's time-oriented focus and its concepts of beats as points in time. It was also emphasized the need for cross-disciplinary research, combining quantitative methods with qualitative research to achieve valid results. Another project that I lead is called Musical Fragmentation. And this project examines the aesthetics and pleasure of fragmented sounds and grooves, focusing on genres such as hip-hop, electronic music, and remix music. The concept of fragmentation here includes sample-based, chopped up, and glitch-inspired musical aspects and heterogeneous soundscapes. The project aims to understand how listeners derive meaning from musical fragmentation and how these experiences connect to cognitive processes and social-cultural contexts. Additional areas of investigation include the production and reception of complex rhythms, the violation of perceptual expectations, and the cognitive restructuring of rhythmic flow. The project has also involved a 4-year research-funded project on remix music. Then we have Mirage, led by Olivier Lartelot, which is also a project funded by the Research Council of Norway, and has lasted from 2019 to 2024. The project has contributed significantly to strengthening the dialogue between computer science and musicology. It has done so through a number of articles, symposiums, collaborations, data sets, and not least through developing new tools and methods for computational analysis of sound, focusing on automating the transcription of Norwegian folk music, among other things. Its main goal is to help musicologists to achieve a deeper and more systematic understanding of music. And then we have the Jamb Dance project led by Rainer Pollack, which is also funded by the Research Council of Norway under its groundbreaking research program. And it lasts from 2023 to 2027. The project is studying multimodal rhythms in Jamb drumming and dance from Mali. Using a rich collection of multimedia recordings, the project merges multi-track audio, multi-camera video, and 3D motion tracking data to explore the coordination, interaction, and integration of rhythmic patterns in participatory music and dance. By combining computational analysis, ethnographic fieldwork, and psychological experiments to study multimodal rhythm in natural performance context, it aims to advance the field of empirical choral musicology. In terms of the output, we have several data sets, including a Hardanger fiddle data set, performance experiments data sets, and a large set of multimedia recordings of live performance. We have over 60 qualitative interviews with producers and survey across various genres and musicians. We have 3 PhD theses and 1 MIT Press monograph on remix music. We have also produced numerous book chapters, keynote, conference presentations, and guest lectures, and also articles in journals such as New Media and Society, Music Theory Spectrum, Journal of Music Theory, Journal of New Music Research, Popular Music, Nature, Human Behavior, Scientific Reports, Journal of Experimental Psychology, Attention Perception Psychology, JASA, Music Perception, Frontiers in Psychology, and several more. Regarding ongoing research, we have several plans for a larger research project that we will seek funding from both European Research Council and the Research Council in Norway. We have several ongoing and planned books, including 1 on rap flows, 1 on broken beats, 1 on microrhythm, and an Oxford handbook on sampling. And we have several ongoing research, or we want to advance the ongoing research and develop that further. For example, Guy, who is postdoc here, has research into just noticeable differences in microrhythm. And Baptiste, who is also postdoc, examines the rhythm and groove in electronic music production. Kjell Andreas, who is also postdoc, he continues his research on rap flows. And Bilge, who is part of Alexander's ambient project, continue research on digitization of movement experience in hybrid formats through ethnographic methods. And Alex, who is a PhD, examine machine aesthetics in live performances of hip-hop. And then we have ongoing research in the other project that I mentioned. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks to all the cluster leaders for presenting a very quick overview of what's happening. So now you've seen the the general gist of things. We'll take a short break now, 15 minutes or so, a little bit longer, 18 perhaps. And then we'll get to the poster blitz and poster presentation, where we'll really be able to talk to all of the PhDs and postdocs more in person. And for those presenting now, so we'll do the poster blitz so that we'll go from alphabetic order up until Laura. So Laura will be the first of the second group. So those before Laura alphabetically, if you could come up and then just get ready here, and then the rest of you can enjoy coffee and talking to a stranger. And then we'll be back at the 1:45. Okay, everyone, find your seats, please. Find your seats. I almost put 1 hour on the clock. That's should be 1 minute. Okay, everyone. Welcome to this first poster session of RITMO Largo 2024. So we are doing this with starting with a poster blitz, and that's our version of the elevator pitch. So each of the recruits here will have 1 minute to present their what they're working on. 1 minute strict. And then when we're done with this session, then we'll go out in the corridors because they have a physical poster hanging out in the corridor and also some demos as well. So this is just to get to see a face and hear a little bit about what people are working on, and then you should go and talk to them afterwards. I could also say that some of the labs will also be open during the poster session. So if you want to sneak in there to look at the labs, that's also possible. And with that, I think we go. We have it in alphabetical order, more or less. So let's see how this goes. And I think you should stand here when you're presenting, and then I'll time you, and then yeah, we'll take it from there. But you start with the microphone.
All right. Well, hello. My name is Abigail Fleckenstein. I'm a doctoral research fellow here at RITMO. I'm under the supervision of Professor Jona Voskoski, and I'm in the Interaction and Pleasure cluster. So the working title for my doctoral research is Resonating Beyond Sound. The projects comprising this research project this body of research will evaluate the social, emotional, and aesthetic responses that people have to music. More specifically, the first and third projects of my PhD will answer this first research question. So what social, emotional, and aesthetic responses make music moving or beautiful? So kind of these responses that comprise these perceptual labels that we put to music or music listening experiences. The next project will look at these second and third questions. So it kind of takes a different approach by looking at the contextual factors that lead to these responses. And so these questions specifically ask, can a musician's morality influence social and emotional and aesthetic responses? And what are the social, emotional, and aesthetic responses to music created by AI? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alejandro Bleckman. I am the PI of the audio project. So the aim of the project is to understand the neurophysiological mechanisms supporting auditory predictions in the human brain. For this, we use data collected at a hospital from patients implanted for clinical reasons with intracranial EEG. We also aim to record single units from these patients. We use the framework of the hierarchical predictive coding, where higher order classical areas are expected to generate top-down predictions about expected events in the future, with inputs that generate prediction errors that use that data, these models for the future years. And for that we use mathematical models, we use advanced signal processing techniques and statistics to understand the connection between these brain regions and how they operate. That's me.
I am Anna Maria Christodoulou, and I am a PhD fellow here at RITMO. In my PhD, I work with combining different types of musical information, or so-called multimodal information, to enhance music understanding, and more specifically, understanding music performances. And I use also technology to make this process faster and more efficient for large multimodal music data collections. One important thing about my project is that we define multimodality as the intentional integration of supplementary information for a specific music processing task. And this is independent of traditional theories that define this as the sensory modalities integration or multimedia integration. And one important task is the task of automated music question answering with the help of artificial intelligence or machine learning models. And if you find this interesting, please come and talk to me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Arthur. I do machine learning and signal processing research in the Ambient project, where we study how indoor environments affect human. And there are three keywords in my research. First is immersive, meaning we want to capture the immersive room using 360 videos and M-Sonic's audio. And the second keyword is audiovisual, meaning we want to feed the audio and video input to machine learning model in different combinations of the modalities. And the third keyword is background and foreground, because in the current machine learning studies, most of neural network are focusing on foreground activities. But in studying indoor environments, the background is also very important. So if you find any of this interesting, welcome to my poster session.
Hello, my name is Attila. I'm also a PhD fellow here at RITMO. Usually I present work on improvisation and flow, and I work with flamenco dancers and guitarists. But today I'm presenting another data set that I'm working on, which is collected at Peter Fust's lab in Denmark. It's on jazz improvisation, and they are jazz pianists that are laying in the scanner, and they are improvising whilst they are playing on the keyboard. And I look into this data set, and my question is their brain also behaving more complexly when they are improvising compared to when they're not? So I analyze both MIDI data, which is like the keystrokes of pianists, and fMRI data. So if you're interested in any of that, please come to my poster.
Yeah. If you want to eradicate cancer or improve aging, it's fundamental that you understand this very important biological process called autophagy. Autophagia literally means self-eating, and this is where cells basically collect waste and eat it as food. And biologists can capture this process onto images, but then it's very hard to make sense of those images. And so my job is to create audiovisual interactive displays for them to do just that. And I'm particularly interested in how image relationships could be transferred into perceived auditory relationships, and this is called image sonification. And since deep learning has demonstrated strong achievements in the digital representations of images and sounds and the mapping between them, I want to explore new methods for image sonification that involves deep learning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Baptiste Bacot. I am a musicologist, and I work on rhythm and music production. I'm particularly interested in bass music, a genre that recently emerged and that brings together electronic dance music and experimental music. That's a bit conflicting, so this is why I'm asking, how do bass music producers design grooves? How do they manage timing when working in their digital audio workstation? And what kind of audience reaction do they seek to provoke by doing so? So I have the three work packages you can see behind me to address these questions. The first one is a corpus analysis of Ableton Live source files and music production live streams from professional producer Mr. Bill. The second one is a music perception experiment using the pairwise comparison method. And the third one is fieldwork in Norway and beyond to broaden and balance these results. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Björn, and I'm fascinated by the fact that no one had the goal to invent the microwave oven and such discoveries. But rather, it was discovered through a series of discoveries that went through seemingly unlikely paths, like the path we see here. And so I'm studying methods that try to simulate such a diversity of discoveries without having any specific goal, so that some of those may become transformational down the line. And specifically, I'm applying those methods to the discovery of sound, so that the discovered sounds may facilitate the creation of new kinds of art. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Diego Marin, a PhD candidate here at RITMO. I am interested in the collaborative creative processes, the somatic experience, and the generative mechanisms in dance. So I belong to the research project Djembe Dance, and recently I did my fieldwork in Senegal, where I collected data to do an ethnography about the creation of music and dance in real time. So I implemented some interviews, participant observation. My research is focused on qualitative analysis, but also I work with some motion capture video analysis, and I do some transcriptions of movement. I am also interested in human-machine interaction in the field of dance, and I have produced some papers in that topic as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fadi. I'm doing joint PhD in here, RITMO, UIO, and University of Lorraine in France. So the celebrated Arab singer said before that he looks at people's movement when he performs, and based on their movement and interaction, he responds to that. So my question here, like, can a machine improviser decode real-time feedback from perceiver's movement, as Sabah Fakhri did? So come and join my poster to see how motion capture can tell something interesting about that.
Hello, I'm Finn Upham, and I'm a researcher here that deals with measurements from crowds of people. Sometimes they're performers, sometimes they're audiences. And in the process of working on this empirical data and trying to understand how simultaneous, say, cardiac changes or respiration or movement patterns are, I'm confronted with the fact that when we do musical activities, our togetherness and coordination varies depending on what's going on. So my poster is an interactive space to help me map with your contributions different degrees of coordinating capacity according to what people are doing as audience members, whether they're clapping along, as you have been doing so kindly, thank you, or laughing, or moving and swaying, or waving light sticks. What counts as coordinated and simultaneous changes depending on what's going on. So please help me map that out at my poster. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Yoros Psaroudakis. I am an ethnomusicologist working at the Djembe Dance project as a research assistant, where I am curating its corpus, doing onset extraction, songs analysis, and dance annotation. I have a high interest on the relations of music, lyrics, and dance. I'm doing ethnography. I'm currently looking to expand from Greek traditional music and dance to African, Balkan, and Nordic genres. And I'm using computer to do all this. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Guy Kamara. I'm a postdoc here at RITMO, a musicologist. For almost a decade now, I've been studying microrhythm, the concept of microrhythm in a lot of groove-based music, such as funk and jazz. And my poster today, I will be presenting the preliminary results of a perceptual study that I'm conducting here at RITMO with several members, psychologists and musicologists. which is about to what extent we can actually perceive microrhythmic nuances in groove-based music, such as laying back, pushing against the beat, and as well as the concept of swing. There's been a lot of discussion to what extent microrhythm matters to the performance of music. A lot of humanists claim that it is so, but just finding out to what extent we actually hear these things go on in music, I think is important, and that's what we're looking at now. Thank you.
So hello, I'm Hugh von Arnhem. I'm a PhD here, and my project is addressing two current trends in music research. The first of which is the incredible interdisciplinarity that we see, and also that this research is moving towards collecting large multimodal data sets from a range of sensing devices. And then for these analyses, it's often required to fuse these together into joint representations. And various disciplines approach this in different ways, using different methods, different broader methodological approaches, and then also theoretical links of the data to the musical constructs. And this can be a challenge for interdisciplinary research. So for my project, I aim to develop a methodological framework to aid in cross-disciplinary collaboration for the analysis of large multimodal data sets, focusing on how temporal and spatial information is represented in individual data streams and then also in joint data representations. So come check out my poster and tell you more about it. Thank you.
So I'm Joachim Mossige. I'm a postdoc here at RITMO. So from ultrasound images, we know a lot about how embryo develops into a full-born baby. But we know very little about the initial stages of development because we don't have the optical resolution to see small things like this using ultrasound. And obviously you can't fit the microscope into the womb of a lady. But we're very interested in these initial stages of development because this can explain why pregnancies sometimes go wrong, for example. It's also of fundamental interest. So we make artificial embryos that we study in the lab using a 3D microscope, and that's shown here on the right. So please see my poster to chat more if you're interested. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Serra. I'm a PhD student. When sound is moving, for us to be able to track the sound, there is information about space and information about time. And to be able to accurately track it, we need to combine this information about space and time. So in my project, I'm using EEG and eye tracking to investigate how the brain combines information about space and time to be able to kind of accurately predict a sound in movement. This is something we know very little about, even for like the visual system. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for everyone that presented now. And then we move into the poster session. And the posters are physically located on the second and the first floor at RITMO. So of course, first of all, it's for the postees. It's for what do you call it? The people, the posters standing at the posters. You need to find your poster where it is and stand there. And then the rest of you walk around and talk to them and give them good suggestions about things. And then it's lunch at 12 noon, and we'll meet back here again for the RITMO seminar series with Xavier Serra at 1:15. So have a good poster session.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rainer Pollack. I'm a professor at the Department of Musicology and PI here at RITMO. I have the honor to moderate this session, which is an instantiation of our RITMO seminar series. The RITMO seminar series is a series of guest lectures by internationally renowned and prominent guest scholars we have here at RITMO. And at the same time, RITMO holds its Largo, which is an open house event, and this week. And RITMO has the kind of tradition to invite one of the members of the scientific advisory board of RITMO to give the seminar in the corresponding in the respective semester, which is the case today. Today we have Professor Xavier Serra from the Universitat de Pompeu Fabra in Catalonia in Spain, and it's my honor to introduce him. Xavier is professor and leads the quite known music technology group within the Department of Engineering at Pompeu Fabra. He earned his PhD in computer music from Stanford University in 1989, focusing on spectral processing of musical sounds. His research, however, spans computational analysis, description, and synthesis of sound and music signals, blending scientific and artistic disciplines. Dr. Serra is internationally leading in the fields of audio signal processing, sound and music computing, music information retrieval, and computational musicology. He received an advanced grant from the European Research Council for the Comp Music project many years ago, which was a major contribution to the diversification, the cultural diversification of computational musicology. Currently, he directs the UPF BMET Chair on AI and Music, which is dedicated to fostering ethical AI initiatives that can empower this music sector. Speaking of cross-cultural and culturally diverse aspects of musicology and computational musicology in particular, I'm looking forward to the talk today, which is studying a musical repertoire with computational approaches, the case of Carnatic music of South India. Xavier, please take it away.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you all for coming. Thank you for the presentation. It's a big honor to be here. Of course, I have followed RITMO for quite some time, and I have been always very, very impressed from all the work being done here. So it's great to be able to present our work in this context. I guess the title is quite clear, so no need to explain it. But I would like to take a kind of a little bit of a historical. I'm not going to be nor very technical, not very musical, and in fact, because I cannot do it, either of the two. But I have to go back to 2010. I have been all my life working within the context of music technology, and I guess in the last 30 years, let's say, on what is called music information retrieval. And I was invited to India to give a talk about the wonders of technology applied to music. And of course, all my audience was mainly Indian students from very good universities around India. And I started talking about what engineers are doing for the benefit of music. And I realized that, well, I didn't have that many benefits for Indian music. A lot of the technologies that we were working were very much Eurocentric, very much from a perspective that did not include a lot of the music traditions there. And of course, I was aware, I was listening some of this music, but it never impacted until you actually live it, and until you actually go there and live the culture and live the music in its own context. So, and that's, so in 2010, I said, okay, I have to do something about it. So I got some funding to be able to address this issue, and that's where ComMusic started. And that was a wonderful project. It lasted, I tried to stretch it as much as I could, maybe 7-8 years, and we still are continuing that in some way or another. And out of that, it was wonderful. And one of the ideas, we selected several music traditions that from an engineering perspective, we thought could lead to interesting technical problems. So musics that were already quite well formalized, well studied musicologically, more or less, so that we didn't have to do sort of field work. We didn't have to worry about some of the things that some of you are doing, and we could focus on, let's say, on the data and on trying to understand and see how could we take advantage of all of that. So, of course, since all these ideas came when I was in India, the two Indian traditions were clearly part of the project, Hindustani and Carnatic. And then I had a few months of wonderful traveling around the world trying to figure out what I could study. And so I decided to focus on Beijing opera, Turkish Makam music, and Arab Andalusian. No time to go into details, and there is a lot of fascinating stories, and of course what we learn and what we did on those traditions. And there was a lot of people, even though, of course, it was a good funding, but we really also tried to stretch it and get parallel funding. So we had a lot of people involved in different capacities, and it was great. The tradition that really had more impact was the Indian music. And there was a number of musicians, professors, engineers in India that got very involved. And thanks to the project, started really working in these topics. And so, for example, this is a book that was published not that long ago, trying to kind of summarize some of the research that had been done during the Com Music project. But Carnatic music somehow became very special. Carnatic music, I discovered, I attended the first concert in 2010, and then I was able to travel to the south of India and really experience firsthand this music. And it had a number of things that were very special. Assume you all know about it, so let's hear a little bit.
Bhavanutana hridayamuna ramimpumu bhavanutana hridayamuna ramimpumu bhavanutana hridayamuna ramimpumu bhavanutana hridayamuna ramimpumu bhavanutana.
Okay, this was the first piece of a concert by Brinda Manika Savakan, who also became a collaborator of the project, in one of the savas in Chennai, in RK. This was last year as part of their festival, the big festival they have, where during 15 days they have thousands of concerts and hundreds of thousands of people attend. So it's not a sort of a small music tradition lost in the south of India. And one of the core units of Carnatic music is the concert. I mean, really, and that was something that I realized immediately. Every CD you think of, every way to present the music is through a concert. So the unit of the concert is fundamental, and it has it's very well thought of and very well designed from the artists when they propose a concert. And it's very formalized, it's very fixed in many ways, and these are 2-hour slot concerts, so this is the 5 pieces that were performed in this concert. And there is always a main piece. The main piece is Miru Pemu, who is like 1 hour long. So half of the concert in this case is the Miru Pemu, and in which it has all the typical structure and components of a Carnatic music concert. The other are more songs with a little bit of a lap and a little bit of improvisation, but mainly the song takes the most weight. So to study this music tradition, then it became very clear that what we have to start from a computational point of view is to collect concerts. So when I went there the first few times, it was wonderful. We would go to record stores and just buy anything that I went with musicians, and let's try to get as many concerts that they thought were relevant, and I would collect them. Later on, it became clear that with the current way of doing research and the concept of openness and being able to reuse the data for concerts, even though in India the copyright issues are a little bit more lax than in other places, but it became clear that we needed to get the permission and be able to get concerts for which we had the permission from the musicians to be able to use them. So we started as part of the corpus that we built, which had hundreds and hundreds of hours. We tried to look for concerts, and we collaborated with Asava in Chennai, which is their RK, and we bought basically, or we sort of agreed with them that they would get the signatures of all the musicians, and in exchange of some fees, and then we would get the recording. So some years ago, we developed the Saraga collection, or the Saraga corpus, that was basically audio. More recently, and this is part of the very recent work, we realized that that was not enough. We wanted to do multimodal, like it was clear this morning that multimodal is our keyword. So we we contacted them again, and during this December season of last year, they would do, I don't know, maybe they would do 3 concerts a day for a month. So it was like more than 100 concerts that would be able to get their hands on. So we were able to get the Saraga audiovisual. We got the recordings. These are the different pieces, and the number of concerts. Well, it doesn't matter, but it's a significant number of concerts. So we would get the audio, and we would get the video, and also we did the motion tracking. And also, very importantly, this in a music situation in regular concerts, they do the recording multi-track. So there is, so we have so in fact here, I'm going to talk about that. So in a regular concert, so we can get the stems for the different instruments, but of course it would have some bleeding. Interesting. There is no music. There is no sound. It used to sound here. Okay. Okay. Anyway, it's not working, but there is the different stems of the music, and that has some bleeding, but good enough for research for certain tasks. So that was a very good data to collect, and that's what we are basically now trying to work from. So through the years, we have collected a lot of data, and it's part of what we call the Dunia corpus. And the Saraga maybe is the most relevant one, and it's already has been used extensively And nowadays, most of the Indian researchers working on Hindustani or Carnatic music, they work with this data. But of course, data is not enough. We need tools, and a lot of people doing research in musicology or even engineering. Nowadays, it's not as easy as to write some software to handle all these large multimodal data with hundreds of hours, et cetera, et cetera. So a big effort in ComMusic, and that has continued, is to try to compile tools on top of which then we can do interesting research and put all our state-of-the-art into that. So a couple of years ago, we had the Izmir conference, the main MIR, Music Information Retrieval Conference in Bangalore, so that the people from ComMusic organized. So that was a big highlight, an opportunity to promote Indian music in their own country, in Bangalore. So we organized a tutorial on all of these, presenting all these collections, and we took that opportunity to develop this Python package called ComPM, which is a whole bunch of tools that do a lot of the things. Basically all the examples I will play come from this. Okay, so anyway, so this is a little bit the context. So what did we work on? And so when ComMusic started, it became clear that melody was a major component of the music and one of the major dimensions, together with rhythm, that I will address later. But melody is the main one. In fact, if you talk with most musicians, most music lovers in India, the word that comes is raga, and the mystic around raga and how to understand what raga is and how raga is being used is at the core of the Indian thinking. So we definitely had to work on that. And at that time, research was a little bit simpler. So basically, I had every PhD student focus on one topic. No? So there was one person working on Indian melody, another in Indian rhythm, another on Indian recognition of the lyrics or some different aspect, and on all music traditions. And so Sankalp Gulati did his PhD thesis on melody. That was before deep learning. And of course, we tried to address a number of topics. The first one that became obvious that we had to work on was the idea of tonic, and then trying to figure out different ways of segmenting the concept of similarity, the concept of finding patterns and relationship of patterns. And finally, the one that everyone wants to solve is the idea of recognizing ragas. So let me play you, because now that in order to do any of these, we need a good pitch analysis, okay? And even though for most engineers, they say that's a solved problem, there is no need to address this problem. In fact, it's not the case. When we started ComMusic, we had a pretty good prominent pitch detection, Melodia, that had been developed by a PhD student in our lab, so that's the one we started. But clearly that had some problems with Indian music. And let's hear some examples so do you understand the difficulties that this might have. So let me some examples of the second piece, the main piece, the 1 hour long piece. I'm not going to play the 1 hour, even though it would be great. So this would be the beginning of the main piece, where what is the lap, the sort of the presentation of the raga, in which the singer starts. It's interesting because the singer starts, the musicians have no clue what she's gonna sing. Especially at this stage, it's scary for the violinist because he will have to improvise along, and he has no clue of what is going on. So it's interesting. I don't know if in this introduction is clear, but the singer starts, and then when you see immediately when the violin recognizes the raga and says, I am safe, I know where to continue from. So let's play a little bit of that. Oh. already got the raga after 4 notes. He's happy. In the first pitch detection algorithm we had, of course, it was analyzing the voice, the violin, all as if it was a single melody, and we couldn't be able to distinguish the voice from the violin. Now we can do that. Then at the end of the lab, then the violin comes in and that's kind of a version of his improvisation of the lab. The madrangam tries to tune from time to time in the middle of the piece, no problem. Oh, no. I got, sorry. 1, 2, this one, no? Okay, now. This is the violin improvisation. Thinking very much, of course, in the improvisation that she did. This section might take up to half an hour. And then finally, the main song starts. And the madranga player has no idea what tala will be the song. In fact, she doesn't know what song it will be, because the rag can be of many songs. She marks the tala, so that helps, so that the madranga can follow. And of course the violinists know the song, and so he's able to play along the music. And of course there is a tambura, the drone. The acoustic one is for the loops. The real one is the electronic one. But of course it looks very nice, and for the musicians it's good. But the one that we hear is mainly from the electronic. Okay, and then this is the song, and then there is a number of sections and repeats, and one major part is the improvisatory dialogue between the singer and the violinist, and so that's the end of the song, and now it starts. The song is in Telugu, but in this section she just sings the swaras, the notes, so it's very helpful for us, in fact, because if one thing is goal is transcription, recognizing the notes, she is spelling out the notes, so that's very useful in these sections. And this is a dialogue, so it's always very free. Differently from Hindustani music, the drum does not keep the time. The time is basically the hand, and the musicians basically play on top of that. They know the the tempo, and they know they know the metric cycle. This is aditala, so they know it. The singer is responsible for normally marking. So the madrangam is free to build on top of that without having to mark the rhythm. For us, it's a nightmare because that means that it's very hard from the audio only. That's why we had to start working on video, because that's not important musical information is not in the audio. Anyway, so okay, out of these situations, of course, pitch information, as I said, is fundamental. We had some state-of-the-art technology 15 years ago that allow us to start worrying about some melodic task, but there was a lot of room for improvement. And a lot of the room for improvement was based on the fact that violin and voice would interfere with each other. And so our latest pitch detection algorithm is based on deep learning. We took one model that was developed, of course, for Western music, FTA-net, that when applied to Indian music would do very poorly. So like most deep learning algorithms, the challenge is not so much on the actual architecture of the model, but on the training data. So we put a lot of effort in developing training data to train a pitch detection algorithm, which is very hard because that would require isolated voice, and there is no way that we could have access to that. So in fact, we had to synthesize a number. So this is a quite complex process in which we were able to synthesize the voice quite well, without artifacts, so from which we could train. I mean, the quality is not something to listen to, but again, a lot of these techniques for us is a way to use data that then we can do further analysis on top of that. So let me play you, so you will hear one of the fragments of the first piece, and then you will hear the pitch synthesized with a sinusoid. So let's see if you can hear. So this is much, much better than what we could do 15 years ago with Melodia. There is no manual correction. A lot of the work that we had to do at that time had to involve manual correction, so no need for that. So anyway, so this is, now we have a pretty decent F0 detection from which to start doing interesting work. And by the way, a lot of this work, even this, really requires musicological understanding and musicological knowledge to try to drive this. And for example, in this paper, and that's from our current work, collaboration with musicologists like Lara Pearson have been instrumental in making that possible. So it's not like a pure engineering work. In deep learning, machine learning, creating the data, properly validating that, requires a lot of musicological understanding, and Lara Pearson has been our musicologist in residence for a lot of the current work that I will mention there. Interestingly enough, okay, pitch can be analyzed, but you cannot really do any proper melodic analysis if you don't understand what tonic is. And when we started, no one had developed any tonic analysis. So I guess you all know. So every singer has its own tonic. In the case of the singer of this concert, she has a G as the tonic. So the tonic is this, no? And then so, and interestingly enough, it looks all musicians would be able to sing it, and that's one of the first things that even the audience, in an intuitive manner, they do, so that then you can understand the raga properly. But it was not that obvious how to analyze, because the tambura is very soft behind, and anyway. But during the beginning of the project, I very rarely I could say that we have a solved problem. Of all the possible solved problems, this is definitely one of them. I think we have reached one of the few problems that we can claim that, okay, is solved. If you go to the notebook that that alongs with this, that's one of the few tasks, if not the only one, that the tonic that returns is 99.9% is the real tonic. Okay, so we had that, we had the pitch, we had the tonic, and of course then the obvious question in Indian music is, okay, but it goes all over. There is no way that we can have a notation that properly captures the essence of this music tradition. And so consciously we say, okay, it's an oral tradition, no way to go into the transcription route. We want to be able to find ways to describe the melodic characteristics from this idea of continuous pitch. The one that at that time many people were working, and especially in Turkish music that became quite relevant, was the idea of pitch histograms. No? So that you take the pitch curves and you sum it all and you normalize it by the tonic, and you can get a very nice looking shape that expresses the tuning, the pitch presence throughout the song. And with that, you can do quite a lot. You can do even decent raga recognition, and for sure to try to understand what are the notes being played. That doesn't work completely because, as some of you may know, in Carnatic and in Hindustani music, the notes that are played going up are different from the going down. So this doesn't capture the nuance of the pitch material there. But out of that came a lot of very interesting work, and we had a number of publications which are very interesting. For example, some of them to try to distinguish Hindustani from Carnatic. By the way, if you go to the south or to the north of India and you ask, okay, tell me a foreign music tradition, the Hindustani musicians, they will talk about Carnatic as something foreign, completely different, and the Carnatic musicians will say about Hindustani the same thing. For most of Western people, they sound the same, but they are really different. And there is a lot of very interesting discussion there. And of course, in both of them, the idea that a note is not a very stable pitch is very clear. And in the case of the South, the concept of swara, the concept of gamakas, make it so that a single name note, name swara, can have a pitch distribution that can be quite complicated. This is, for example, the same note name in 4 different ragas, which is radically different. But anyway, we will come back to that. But anyway, out of this, the concept of intonation and making sure that we distinguish the tuning and the concept of the reference scales, and then how in performance people sort of interpret these swaras and in the context of the song, in the raga. It's very interesting. But of course, immediately became, at the beginning of MIR, the concept of similarity is at the core. No? So we always want to analyze what is similar from what, and that is an important task. And so, and this was from very early on, and there was some paper, but so if to any of us you play this, you play this, and you play this, and you ask any of us which of the two are most similar, we all would agree that it's 1 and 2, okay? If you ask a Carnatic musician, no, this is this is a Hindustani, this is a tabla. So if you ask a Hindustani musician, they would say no. This the 1 and 2 are so the first and the last are the ones that are most similar. There is no magic there. It's simply that they belong to the same rack, and therefore the rack identity is much more important than the Euclidean distance of two pitch curves. Okay, so we started working on trying how can we develop similarity measures that take into account the reality of the racks and the reality of melodic context that they have. No, we didn't solve it, by the way, but anyway, we started working on that, and some interesting work came out, and some very nice interfaces, and at least to try to approach the problem with that. Okay, let's jump now. So the project ended, and some very nice contributions came out of that, but of course, I tried to continue. There is no way that a research line like this one can you finish it and put it in a drawer. This requires years and years of research. So I have been able to get some students, get some funding to be able to continue a little bit of that. One of the first tasks in this second phase, like in RITMO, that was the first phase. Now we are in the second phase with less resources. We have been working on in the deep learning era to do source separation. Source separation is very important. There is, even though we have these recordings with the stems of the multi-track of a concert, but there is leakage, and it's not good enough, and we would like to be able to have systems that would work on regular concert data and recordings and be able to analyze the different instruments separate. So source separation is one of the areas in which the deep learning technologies have had the most success on. For me, source separation was, I would never propose any student, and I would refuse of any student to work on source separation prior to deep learning, because the quality and the difficulty, the mathematical complexity of the techniques that were used for source separation were really very difficult, and the results were not, let's say, musically relevant. Now with deep learning, they are, and suddenly there is a lot of products, a lot of companies, a lot of engineers that are using these type of techniques for a number of tasks. And there is a number of models like Splitter or some very quite used machine learning models, deep learning models that are commonly used. Of course, they have been trained on Western pop music. They do wonders when you have a voice, a drum, a guitar, and a bass, or something like that. You take the same model and play any of this music, and it's awful. I mean, it doesn't get anything, or it gets things very badly, okay? So it means that we need to train these models using data from this music tradition. So we started working on that, and this is the work that Janice Plaja mainly has been working on, and we have published a few things, and the diffusion models have been a good sort of group of models, deep learning models that with which we have been able to get some good results. Again, they are far from being the results that are obtained in Western music and all these companies with resources and a lot of data. And we don't, what is the main problem in source separation research in deep learning? That you need to have clean, isolated tracks on which to train the data, and we don't have that. The ones that we have are the tracks that have leakage, and with that, I mean, deep learning is really stupid, so they are not able to learn anything from that. Okay. So we had to figure out ways to adapt these diffusion models to see, okay, with leakage, what can we do? How can we go about that? And this is, well, bleeding, is what we call. So let me play you our state-of-the-art by taking a random fragment of this. It's one of the hardest ones, so the quality is one of the poorest ones, but it gives you an idea. So this is a fragment that has the drums, the violin, the voice, and the tambura. Okay, and the extracted voice. Again, I would, of course, this is completely useless from a musical playing back point of view, but from an MIR point of view, it's quite good. I mean, a pitch analysis based on this is much, much better than a pitch analysis based on the overall multi-track recording. So anyway, so it's a very good pre-processing tool for doing a lot of interesting work, and that's what we are now using all the time. And hopefully, as we get more data, these type of systems will get better. Okay, so now we can revisit all the melodic work that we had done with better tools. We now have a better pitch detection, a better source separation. So what can we do for doing that? Based on that. And this is the work that now, again, we are strongly collaborating with Lara Pearson on trying to find real melodic patterns from a musical sense. I mean, for me, in the raga world, what is the ideal concept that sort of that defines the music characteristics and the improvisation approach of some musician and the characteristics of a composition are the motivic patterns, no? And there are motivic patterns that some come from the composition, some come from the raga, some can be sort of the artist might develop on their own. So we have to find ways to figure out those. And those patterns are not repetitive patterns. They are very creative patterns, like the similarity we saw before. They can really use the same melodic idea, but it can be rendered quite differently. But we have been doing good progress on that. And this with deep learning, with these proper pitch tracks, so that we can do this at a scale. We cannot afford to do this type of research with few data. And we need a lot of annotations. And that's where the work of Lara, the work of the musicians we have collaborated have been fundamental. These type of techniques learn as much as the knowledge you put in to the model, either as the data or the annotation or the constraints you add to. So we have been able to add, to have a lot of data, annotated data, and it's very painful work. I mean, this work, I think we just started from one song. In one song, you have, I don't know, 1,500 notes, and you have to annotate them all, note by note, in order to be able to validate any of these systems, or in this case, motive by motive, no? So that, and well, anyway, you can look at this paper. I don't completely follow everything. So, and again, a lot of this type of research, typically in MIR, the output of a paper is a big table of confusion metrics or some accuracy sort of values that maybe from a mathematical point of view make sense, from a musical point of view make very little sense. So it's very important to develop interaction tools for musicians, for experts, so that you can interact with. So for example, out of this paper, there is all all these patterns, you can navigate through them, you can listen them, and you can see what has learned, what is the concept of similarity that it has learned, and see if it has any relevant musicological relationship. And this has been quite very useful. Okay, so this is still kind of a pattern analysis task, but from data-driven very strongly. And our latest work, and we are continuing on that, is, okay, but let's even do more musically informed research, and let's try to realize that the concept of a swara is not something that can be analyzed from an isolated point of view. A swara is contextual. There is a lot of co-articulation, like in language. So if we want to identify a swara, we cannot just identify a specific pattern. We have to identify all the possible patterns within all possible co-articulations or contextual relationships that it has. And this is this paper in the LFN that we just published recently. Again, with Lara, this is even more important, the work of musicology, because we basically had to develop also the musicological theory of what does it mean co-articulation in swaras in Carnatic music. What aspects of the beginning, the ending, and the contextual musical aspect we need to include, and how to include it so that we can cluster all these swaras and find all possible renderings of a swara on all possible contexts. Okay, and so then you get all these different shapes that can be quite different, but they belong to a particular cluster within a swara. And all these clusters make up the swara, okay? So once we have that, there is a huge potential for many tasks. For example, transcription. Now, finally, we can try to address the concept of transcription because we can sort of fully understand the complexity of a swara in all its forms and still use a naming some characteristics that can unify them all. Okay, and I think I am running out of time, so let me go quickly. Out of this work, and especially out of this data, Saraga, there has been a lot of research. Many people have started working on this or have continued. In fact, nowadays, when we started Carnatic music, no one knew within the MIR community. In the last Izmir in San Francisco 3 weeks ago, maybe, I don't know if it was the most studied music tradition, but clearly was one of the most studied music traditions. There was quite a number of papers working on Carnatic music, thanks to this data and thanks to all the work that we had done. And for example, this is a little bit old. Again, the typical task that many people would work is in raga recognition. This is one of them using the Saraga. The result is not impressive, but anyway, it's interesting, and there is a lot of very interesting work there. So I have to finish, of course, talking a little bit about rhythm, but I have to say that we have been doing very poorly. Okay, rhythm. Well, there was a PhD thesis. Ajay Srinivasamurthy. He did an amazing work to set up the problem, identify, and get the sort of some probabilistic approaches to identify structure pattern, the meter, and the sama, and a number of the relevant musical concepts, but of course with results that are not very good. And to know about that, let's hear the solo section of the Madrangam. You will see the singer marking the aditala, so you will see what is the relationship between her marking and and the. So now she's finishing the song, and now she starts. She tunes. Well, but let's go a little bit further. So she tunes it more in the middle of the piece, no problem. The beat is kicking, and now. a simple tala. This is one of the simplest talas because it's a ditala. It's an 8-beat tala, but it's a slow, so it subdivides the 8 beats. From the audio, when we had the audio recordings, we would not be able to figure out, I would not be able to figure out what cycle is that. By looking at her, that's easy. So since when we finished the first part of music, we realized this was a tough problem. So what did you have to do? Well, we wanted to develop educational tools that would help people like us to try to figure out how to beat to the tala cycle. So Rafael Caro, who did his PhD thesis on the Beijing opera, on the Jinju music, great ethnomusicologist, and so he also got into all the traditions, and he developed this tool that allows people to kind of, it's like a game type of, well, it's like educational, okay, let me go here. So it allows to get understanding, you can follow and play, but let me play since we don't have much time. Let's look at this. This is so we select a song. Let's take a short one. Let's load audio. So here we have a visualization of. So there is the pitch, manually corrected because this was at the time that we didn't have a good pitch detection. So you see the bouncing ball with the pitch, and then when the, so this is the alap section, and then when the, so you see the aditala going by. So with this type of tool, I think it's quite very useful, at least for me and people don't know in the tradition, to try to understand what is going on. And we have worked on a number of tools with this purpose. Education at the end was a major sort of outcome or sort of application area that we started developing. We created a company in India to do educational software for singers. We developed these. We developed a number of tools and things and these tutorials to help musicians and to help music lovers to try to understand these music traditions. And that's okay. Let's close. And that's it. Basically, I want to just make sure there has been a lot of work. Of course, I have only been able to go through a few highlights. CompiAM, I think, is a very useful tool for researchers. And nowadays, with Python notebooks and Colab, it's quite easy, let's say, to get into this highly computational and complex set of tools. Our Dunia includes all the corpora, all the data that we have been sharing and putting all together. We had this tutorial on the Izmir 2022 that has a lot of interesting material to go through that. Of course, the website of ComMusic. Musical Bridges is this set of tools for educational material that Rafael put together that also has all these different music traditions. And there is a number of tools that MIR community as in general have been putting together, like we are very much active in Mir data. Nowadays, it's not enough to have one data set and one piece of software to handle it all. We are using many data sets. We need to integrate all these ecosystem of data. And so with Mir data is something that is becoming feasible. And all the data sets that we develop for ComMusic are part of this ecosystem. And anyway, that's it. So first of all, apart from the initial ComMusic people, the people that are currently, of course, the size, as you see, is much smaller. So the current people that are now active with Carnatic music are these people, and we are very excited about our recent results. I think it's a good time for doing this type of research. There's a lot we can take from other types of research, and especially all these deep learning AI type of things that is very interesting. Hopefully we will get back to rhythm, that we haven't been able to do rhythm work. So some of the work that was done in the past didn't make it to this year because it was developed on MATLAB or on different contexts. So it's very difficult to maintain all this know-how and all these tools and update them. We have succeeded in a number of them, which I think is very relevant, but not in all of them, and rhythm has been one of them. So coming here, I feel a little bit bad that rhythm has been left out, but there's a lot of potential, and there's a very interesting thing. Whoever can solve some of these Thala cycles, one Thala cycle, one unit, one measure is 120 seconds. So we were not able to identify the coherence of 120 seconds and finding the unity of that and its repetition. So who can solve that, they will have a very good contribution. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Xavier. We have about 15 minutes for questions and responses. Please. No questions from the audience? Yes. I see 2 hands up. Let's go first with Serra.
Thank you so much. Very, very inspiring. You discussed a lot the progress in terms of pitch detection. I'm wondering, what about onset detection? Since in singing, from the singing perspective, and looking at choir or ensemble singing, that this is a very big, big problem, especially when we have a portamento, legato, so with all these issues. So I'm wondering if you can give us some, lights at the end of the tunnel, if we can see some lights.
Well, for me, it's interesting because musicians-wise, clearly the singers, they work about melody, they work with raga, madranga players work with thala, and when you ask any rhythm question to a singer, they say, no, I don't know anything about that. When you ask a madrangan player about melody, I don't know anything about that. So it's interesting the division, and of course they know about rhythm, but sincerely, I think in a very different way as we would do sort of in other type of music traditions. Musicians are singers are quite free rhythm-wise. They typically the sama, the beginning of the cycle, that's the fundamental because that's a structural element. So the beginning of the cycle, of course, they improvise having that into very clear. So sama detection is a fundamental. Onset detection in voice is impossible. I mean, we are trying for transcription, we need to do that because you need to segment the swaras, and that's basically the onset. But it's a different concept, that onset. In Madrangam is easy, it's very easy, so it's clearly easy. So the concept of onset and even the concept of synchronization and an alignment of the voice and the drum, I think it's a different thing. It has to be studied, not much that we have been doing. So I think it's very interesting, but it's a different world. I don't think they pay as much attention and they are as conscious as they would do it in other traditions. But yeah, that's...
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's impressive work, especially considering the difficulty of the complexity of the music. My question was, I was wondering if you had the opportunity to show your results and your tools and your analysis to Indian musicians, and what if you were able to get them validate something or improve things, or their overall feeling about your work?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question, because that's, of course, that was all our aim from day one, and we have been interacting with musicians. For me, Carnatic music is a very special music tradition, south of India. All the kids from good families, they learn music. I mean, that's clear that music is a fundamental sort of education that kids in the good castes go through. At the same time, all kids from a good family, they have to study engineering. All. I mean, basically, maybe now it's changing a little bit, but any good, intelligent kid would be forced to study engineering. So you have this kind of situation in which you have people that love music, that have studied music, but they are engineers, and therefore engineers. So, and then people that make it into the music, in fact, many of them have done engineering. And many good engineers have done music. So that situation, I hardly find it in other music traditions. So that makes that the communication with musicians and between engineers and musicians is much more fluid than in other music traditions. And that's great. That's wonderful. And this is one of the reasons why this research has been progressing. All the Indian students I have had that study this are great musicians. Great musicians. I mean, they are, to prepare this, we have Aditi, and she studied Veena, and I mean, it's just amazing. The ear they have is just unbelievable. I don't think that many people train in a Western system they have. But then going back to the question, for me it was very interesting. There are some, of course, many musicians, intellectually, they like this approach and they love it. But there was some feedback that was very interesting. And one feedback that I especially I take home with is that good musicians, they have an amazing ear. And they have an amazing memory. And they have learned everything sort of by oral tradition. Why do they need any shape, any pitch curve, any formal explanation of that if they have it all inside? And they have learned it and they have embedded it? They don't need it. It's only us that don't have a good ear and we don't know the tradition that we need this type of help. But for them, again, intellectually, interesting. In practice, what do they need? They know all the ragas, they know everything. They don't know how to verbalize, so maybe it would be good for them to be able to verbalize. If you ask them the difference between one rag and another, and I don't know if you have ever been into any lecture by musicians, they sing. Everything when they explain it, they sing. That's all they do. And for you, you don't understand anything because they just sing the examples. That's their way of transmitting their knowledge and understanding everything they do. Useless, what we do. For some of these musicians, useless. Anyway, there is another question there.
Okay. That's what's the answer to social impact?
Thank you very much. Well, that was really mind-blowing in many ways. I have a ton of questions, but I'll restrict myself to two. So first of all, has your research been able to establish any sort of link between the musical structure and emotion? Because I mean, I played with Indian music, and I know there are certain rhythms that are, this is a happy emotion, this is sad emotion, and you can hear it as a Western listener thinking, I can't hear the difference. So I was wondering whether it's all learned associations or there's some musical structure, there's some structure to it. Maybe I'll just, the other one was about interaction, but that's
okay, let's,
yeah.
So yeah, this one for me is interesting because, again, many music lovers and the culture of Indian music is very much based on the motions of the rags. No, and in Hindustani, even for every rag has in every part of the day you're supposed to sing a rag because it's related to that part of the day. And every rag there is the rasas, and there is treatises going back hundreds and hundreds of years classifying rags with emotions. Okay, so there is a long tradition musicologically and intellectually of relating ragas with emotions. So because of that, there has been quite a bit of research on trying to validate those correlations. I don't know of any that has succeeded in trying to identify. Of course, tempo clearly. For example, this song that we play is a very slow tempo, so it's kind of a sad song. And the rag. This is well, of course, depending on the first song, it was a pentatonic scale. This second one, no, but kind of has a minor kind of tone. So some of these concepts can be applied, and you can say, okay, this is a sad song, and many people would talk about that. I mean, it's a very, I don't know of any other music tradition that going back hundreds of years, there is a very formalized sort of set of criteria of this relationship between emotion and rags, and many people are trying to use this in music therapy and things like this. I personally have been skeptical in the sense that I have not been able to see anything, but there is a lot of things going on, and a lot of people really believe strongly in this. Of course, there is the religious component. And again, some people would say that the religion has nothing to do with the music. Some people strongly follow the lyrics. This was, by the way, these two songs were in Telugu. There's many languages, so that makes it also hard to understand every song by every other person. But the lyrics, for some people, are very important, and they convey a spiritual type of atmosphere that is very relevant for them, some not. So there is huge controversy about all these things.
It was just that, I mean, for music that I know, there's some structure. You can identify certain types of structure. For instance, the very simple happy sad thing. You know that sad music emulates our voices when we are sad and so forth. So there's structural. I mean, there's structural components to how we express emotion, and your research would be...
The structural component, I don't think is relevant in here. It's just the rag melodic sort of weights and transitions between the notes that clearly might correlate to some emotional conveying. And the tala sort of... cycle and how it's expressed, but yeah, we didn't really do any much of that.
Yes, more questions.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm really among your fans, following your work and the group in UFP. My question is mostly about the strategy, and I would talk a little bit, like I read the paper before you, kind of addressing music technology back in the 90s. It was very helpful to know and give it to people. What is music technology about? Another recent one was something like how to collect a data set and the procedures of that. That helps so much as one, even for me after years of research. So I also work in underrepresented music, Arab maqam music of the Mashraq. You worked on the Maghreb region, you worked the Andalusian and Turkish, and India is not so far from what we are interested in. And my main question right now is, I'm approaching, hopefully if I make it, I'm going to complete PhD and go back to Jordan. So the motivation, like how did this start? The Indian part, or the Turkish, or the Moroccan, like how the seed, after 10 years, cycle of research continues. Tell me, like, how would you start the seed and irrigate it for a few years? That's what I want to know.
Well, of course, the important thing is to have some funding and to be consistent. I mean, at the end, sincerely, a lot of the research that we do is also kind of abstract, and so it's difficult to explain to the real people and to the community that you're trying to impact. So the collaboration, if you cannot convince a musician of your tradition that what you're doing is interesting, you're dead. And this is what we try, and we got this feedback, not so positive, but we got very positive feedback from the educational institutions and from other institutions. So very early on, we tried to engage people that had some weight in that music tradition to be part of us, both from the engineering side, so we collaborated with the two major universities, IIT Mumbai and IIT Chennai. We involved the most credited musician in Carnatic music, T.M. Krishna, so we got many of these musicians to collaborate. So we tried to make a sort of a good meaning within the community that emerged that. And of course, you need consistency, and again, you need to be quite pragmatic in some way, and to listen to these people and to try to approach problems that they can relate to, not some very abstract concepts. No, so for example, the idea of raga recognition, every music lover would love to have a system that would do raga recognition. They go to a concert, they start, the violinist immediately gets the raga. The audience, the first few rows of the audience, they get it, and as soon as they get it, they tell to the neighbor. So it's a community very engaged in kind of the theoretical aspect of things, which I don't find, I don't know, when in classical music we lost the ability to say, oh, E minor, and now it's modulating to C major. How many music lovers listen? I would like to believe that at that time, in 200-300 years ago, people were, music lovers were able to do that. We have lost that ability, I think, most audience. In Carnatic music, they have not. In Carnatic music, there is this sort of group of people, the first rows of any concert, that the first thing they do is they get the rag, the second thing they do is they beat their tala, and the third thing they do is when they go home, they record, and when they talk about amazingly musicologically relevant concepts among themselves. Here, the maximum thing we say, I loved it. It was good. Very nice. No, they really go into a detail. So it's a very special community that allows to have this type of feedback to be successful. This is why, among all the others, for example, we work very much on Arab Andalusian music from the Maghreb, from Morocco. Impossible. We have one musicologist, excellent. We had an excellent relationship with him. We have an amazing data set of scores. We have an amazing data set of recordings. And we lacked this integration into the community to really push it forward. And it's an amazing tradition. And for us Spaniards, is fundamental because that's the only classical music tradition that was born in what is now Spain. So I felt very guilty of not knowing anything about it in my education. So I felt I have to include it. I mean, there is no way that I have to include that. And it's very much alive in the north of Morocco. But we have not succeeded in doing exactly what you're saying. We have not succeeded in getting researchers from Morocco to be motivated to do that. So depends. I mean, it's really, I can give you some tips, but now there is Abu Dhabi and NYU Abu Dhabi, who is really trying to be a hub of all the Middle East music. And Izmir is going to be organized there in a couple of years. And they really have a mandate to promote all the research in all the Arabic Peninsula and all the Arab world around. So that's an opportunity of a relevant institution that is trying to coordinate and promote that. Yeah.
Okay, I saw several raised hands. Valiant, Professor Clark, some others, but I fear we consumed our time. So let's give a big hand to our speaker, Xavier Serra.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we have a break, but program is continuing.
The program is continuing. Thanks a lot to Xavier again. And if you didn't get enough of him, then we'll have a special session tomorrow morning at 10 to 11:30 with more discussions. But of course, he is also around later today and a couple more days as well. So you can grab him and talk more. Now we have a short break before the next poster session. I could also say that the cafe in this building will close at 3 o'clock, so if you are hungry, then run away and get some food there before 3. We'll start here in 15 minutes. We'll have the poster blitz. So those of you preparing for poster blitz, then you should line up here before we start, and then for the poster sessions. Also, Finn is also handing out some respiration vests for those of you that, for the RITMO people that want to have some respiration vests on, and then you should check your email for a form to fill out there. So that's for those. But for everyone, then a break, and then I'll see you back in 15 minutes. Let's see, is that too dark? Yeah. Welcome back, everyone, for the second edition of the funniest thing we ever do at RITMO, which is the Poster Blitz, the chance to say everything you know in the world in 1 minute. And as we did earlier today, so we'll do 1 minute for each of the people standing here now, and then there will be the poster session out in the corridor as earlier. Those in the back. Please come in. Yeah, I think we are ready to go, more or less, starting here.
Yes. Hello. My name is Benedicte Wallace, and I am a postdoctoral researcher here at RITMO. And I don't usually start off any talks by waving at the audience, but I did so on purpose today because it was to prove a point. So even this small movement of me taking a few steps and waving tells us a lot more than we might first think. So it tells you something about my emotional state and what I'm thinking, and maybe even a little bit about my personality. So now imagine trying to teach that nuance to a robot. Because how should we really go forward with trying to capture the essence of human expressivity and translate that over to a non-humanoid? I'm interested in this specifically in the context of social robots. So as robots begin sharing our spaces, and interacting with us, we really need to understand what they are doing, and to develop something like that. I thought I was really going to do it this time.
Hello, my name is Laura Bishop. I am a researcher here at RITMO. I'm specializing in music psychology. Most of my research concerns the cognition of music performance. So I'm interested in the mechanics of instrumental performance and coordination in music ensembles, and also how attention and musical understanding affect body motion. So for this I use different technologies like motion capture and eye tracking in order to see how people move when they're playing music and what they're paying attention to. So all of this comes together in the poster that I will present today. It's about the Bodies in Concert project, where we have collaborated with professional symphony orchestras to collect data during concerts from the orchestra and from the audience. And I will be presenting a study that is about individuality and collectivity in string sections.
Hello everyone, I'm Maham. I did my bachelor's in accounting and finance, and then I was pulled into the dark side because I was working as a pianist in the music industry in Pakistan. And that's when I first saw a studio and I fell in love with the world of music technology. I went on to do a master's in music tech at NYU, where I lived in studios practically. I specialized in immersive sound for games and film. And now I am a lab rat because I'm a PhD fellow and I exist in labs. So I study indoor audiovisual rhythms and how they impact the human body. And I also design interactive objects that can enhance the experience of a space. And I just realized this during Xavier's talk that my last name, Riaz, it means to practice. And in the context of music, it means to practice music, which is quite meta.
Okay, attention is rhythmic, at least some people say, and it helps us process sensory input that has rhythmic structure to it, like music and even speech. But sometimes we need attention to be more continuous, like a cat waiting for the mouse to come out of the mouse hole. Or if I can use an example from our species, it could be like a runner waiting for the starting pistol. What neural mechanisms support how the brain chooses between rhythmic and more continuous modes of processing? If you want to learn more about it, you will have to come and talk to me at my poster.
All right, my name is Mikael Open. I'm a PhD student here at RITMO. Most people enjoy watching films and TV shows, at least to some degree, and music can make a very big difference when it comes to the viewing experience. But it can also become very complex, these rhythm studies combined. So I'm looking at how these rhythms and interactions are affecting our attention, memory, and our experience of time, and how that is related to the feeling of being absorbed into the film experience. So come by my poster and we can talk some more about film, music, and science, which is a very good combination, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Nora Seres, and I'm a PhD researcher here at RITMO, and I'm looking at the combination here between the different aspects of rhythm and cognition and how this relates to sport and performance. So thinking about running here in a specific context, how our rhythmic skills of how we are moving efficiently across complex terrain, like up in the mountains, and how this relates to our planning and our attention, and how we are also maybe automating these processes to be most effective in a performance environment. So yes, I also do some running. So if you want to talk about this rhythm, cognition, and running, come and stop by.
Yes, Olivier Lartillot. So my main interest is developing computational models for music analysis, as you see at the bottom. And I was working and designing especially the MIR toolbox that directly from audio get some music analysis aspect. But this is quite limited if you go directly from audio to get this high-level description of music. That's why the importance of doing automated music transcription and from the score or advanced score, getting this higher level of aspect of music analysis. So I have been working a lot on music transcription for the Mirage project, especially for Norwegian folk music. And you have this different step in yellow of music transcription and the different method in blue from machine learning, and also the importance still of using signal processing and the combination of both machine learning and signal processing into some kind of hybrid AI that will use some cognitive musicological principles. So the importance of interdependencies between the score, transcription, and music analysis. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name is Pedro Lucas. I'm PhD candidate affiliated with the Department of Informatics. My research topic is human swarm interactive music systems. So the idea is figure out how can we interact in real time with a swarm of autonomous agents. So there could be some sort of models that you can find in nature and can be represented mathematically. So the idea is to explore emergent properties from these systems and figure out in which ways we can interact with this kind of chaotic environment. So the idea is to explore also several of these technological platforms, like virtual in simulations, also physical virtual, using mixed reality, and eventually with robots. So now I'm in this stage, like exploring mixed reality, and I have some nice demo in my poster, so yeah, please come. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rainer Pollack. I'm an associate professor and a PI here at RITMO. My research has been focusing on case studies of specific traditions of drumming for dance, mostly from West Africa since 1991. And the Djembe Dance project, which is a multidisciplinary, multi-method project on a multimodal rhythm, a lot of multi in music and dance from Mali, West Africa is the current main project. But I've also tried to develop cross-cultural approaches to rhythm perception and cognition over the past 15 years or so. And my contribution today is what I call a theory poster, out of embarrassment that it's so text-heavy. It's a theory poster about the concept of culture in cross-cultural research.
My name is Sabine Leske. I'm a guest researcher at RITMO and a researcher at the Helgenans Hospital. And my main research interests are the neurophysiological correlates of auditory prediction and perception. And I investigated the temporal precision of a beat via EEG. So if you're interested in that, you can come to my poster. And I also investigated via intracranial EEG self-generated sounds and the violation of this, how the brain reacts to violation of self-generated sounds. And I'm involved in a project that looks at mind-wandering in ADHD patients. And we are interested in developing an intervention study via rhythmic simulation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sagar Datta. I'm a postdoc in the Djembe Dance project. So my current research focus is to develop methods to extract rhythmic cues directly from the dance data, and to develop an evaluation method to assess the synchronization between dance and the musical beats. And I'm also exploring ways to estimate tempo directly from the dance data. And a possible use case of this method is when you have a dance video or motion, dance to a music, and later you decide to replace the music. You can use this method to find a similar music track that perfectly synchronizes with the dance patterns. So you can find my posters downstairs at the kitchen. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandra Soli, and I'm a PhD fellow at RITMO. And in my poster, I will present an EEG study on rhythm-based temporal expectations with the aim of delineating the roles of predictability and periodicity. Most previous neuroscience studies have looked at the perfectly periodic rhythms, such as the ticking of the metronome. But as we know, most rhythms in our lives are not that simple. They are more complex. Both in music and speech and also nature sounds. And I've been investigating rhythms that are gradually increasing and decreasing in tempo, such as accelerations and decelerations in music, and try to see if the suggested underlying mechanisms are also applicable to such aperiodic rhythms.
From the time of Plato to the Middle Ages, music, together with astronomy, arithmetic, and geometry, formed the quadrivium, 4 foundational subjects of a liberal arts education in Western society. However, over the century, music and science diverged into separate disciplines. My name is Serra. I'm a pianist, a musicologist, and researcher in music performance science. And I aim to fill the gap between science, music performance art, and music performance science. I integrate knowledge from musicology and music theory with scientific tools and methodology to investigate the musical events. My research focuses on the cognitive, behavioral, and physiological correlates of music performance science in various settings, from solo performance to orchestra formations, in laboratory settings, and during live concerts. And today I'm presenting a study on cardiac coherence in musicians. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom. I'm a master's student at the Department of Musicology, and this semester, together with my colleague Karenina, I've been taking part in a research internship here at RITMO in a project called Interactive Furniture. My piece is on the right here. It's called Audible Reflections, and it features an interactive mirror which plays back manipulated versions of the sound that it listens to. And unlike others here today, we get the privilege of showing our actual pieces. So if you hear some weird sounds coming from the middle of the upstairs corridor, it's probably from us. So come and check it out.
Hi, I'm Karenina, and for my project, I took a sewing machine from 1911, and I invited users to modernize it through interaction. So the concept is to use a sewing machine as you traditionally would, but in using the sewing machine, you change the traditional sound samples into modern sound samples using modern technology. Yeah, I think that's good.
Hi, I'm Tobias. I'm a PhD student under the PIRC project. So I work with developing robots for healthcare, especially in elderly care and rehabilitation in homes. So I will take inspiration from human cognitive psychology and use the theory of this fast and slow thinking and try to merge this into reinforcement learning and robotics. And hopefully it will lead to more adaptable, more intuitive and smarter robots for the future. So if you want to listen about how I'm going to do this, come to my poster.
I'm not Vilde.
Hello, I didn't know I was in the slideshow. My name is Vilde Aaslid. I'm a guest researcher here this year. I am here researching Norwegian folk music and the asymmetrical meters that happen within Norwegian folk music, so I'm excited for tonight. I have 2 projects. One which is on asymmetrical meters of Norwegian folk music as they happen outside of Norway, and this is an ethnographic project. And the other project has to do with how these meters, how they work outside of the traditional dance context, how they happen in improvisatory contexts. So that is me.
Okay, that's me. Hi, I'm Vinicius. I'm a postdoc under the Audio project. I'm interested in how we build models of our environments specifically, and what's the role of auditory predictions in this. We do this by analyzing cognitive tasks in humans with intracranial recordings and single neuron recordings. And I'm doing this with 2 different approaches. One is seeing how we may abstract knowledge in the form of cognitive maps, and how is this related to how we organize knowledge in space. And this approach, the other approach that I'm presenting in the poster, is how do we encode regularities in the auditory landscape, and what happens when there are violations of these regularities, and how do neurons respond to this specifically. So if you want to know more about this, I'll be happy to talk more about it.
Excellent. So then we are off to the physical poster session, which again is split between the second and the first floor. And try to split yourself so that you don't all go to the same floor, but so that everybody can get someone to talk to at their poster. And then we will be back here at 4 o'clock for the final panel discussion with our SAB members that are present for an interdisciplinary discussion. So that's don't miss that one, particularly for those online, because you cannot join the poster session, but be back here at 4 o'clock. And have a nice poster session. Okay, welcome back everyone, and it's this kind of very interesting entrainment, silencing you could say, happening when at 1 minute before we're supposed to start you all become silent, so we're quiet. That's it's an interesting phenomenon really, how you can do this, and it was also very interesting to see during the poster blitz session earlier today that most people were kind of ending 7 or 8 seconds before the minute was done. So it's something about getting used to the time, and I guess we could talk more about that eventually as well. But the topic of this panel discussion right now is future directions at the crossroads of musicology, psychology, and technology, which is something that we care a lot about at RITMO. We are currently at the present crossroad of these, but we are also very interested in the future, what will happen afterwards, or after RITMO, but also more generally for everyone else working in these fields on these type of topics. And with me today, this afternoon, I have then a distinguished panel composed of members from RITMO Scientific Advisory Board. This is about around half of our board that could be physically here. We have some others following us on the stream, but we chose to only have the physically present ones in this panel. But you already know Xavier Serra from Fabra. We have Eric Clark from Oxford University. We have Nicky Dibben from Sheffield University. We have Mark Lehmann from Ghent University and Peter Wust from Aarhus University. So it's a very well represented group of scholars covering different disciplines at the crossroads of musicology, psychology, and technology in different ways. And then the big question is, well, perhaps just even to start out, why would we be interested in work at the crossroads between musicology, psychology, and technology? I think, Xavier, you already talked about this to some extent during your talk, but if you were to, I guess you have mainly been working on at the crossroads of musicology and technology, not so much on the psychology aspect of it. Is that something you have been thinking about along the way?
Yes, but at one point it was clear that it was a difficult area to get into. But now I think it comes back to be a very relevant topic. So, of course, for me, everything that we do is being driven by the AI hype and by the potential of being able to have a very interesting debate that has never happened before of how to develop AI systems that can be of relevance to society, no? And that then brings exactly psychology, cognition, engineering, and musicology that they need to be together, because the answers to this question of how to develop AI systems that are not only economically viable, but they are ethically and societally grounded, become very important. And the academic answers, I think clearly every field will have to say something about it, and for sure psychology has a lot of saying, and in the sense of we need to be able to, what is intelligence, what is cognition, what is things that all these AI systems should be able to interact with us with, and it's clear that there is a lot of things that come to that are very relevant, musicology for sure, and of course technology. So I think we are at a very good moment in which there is a lot of questions that are very open in society, that are, for me, that's one of my approaches, is we have to do research that is impactful and is impactful for society and that can be explained. And now these things, I think, are quite easily explainable under the umbrella of the AI hype.
We can get back to that hype a little bit later, but to pass it on to Eric. So your take on this has, I guess, been more at the crossroads of musicology and music psychology. But what is your take on this, and also perhaps the addition of the technology aspect in this mix?
Yeah, I was thinking actually that I was thinking about an old project that I was involved in. So in about 1989, I think it was, I was involved in a project with Peter Dessin and Henk-Jan Honing. I had some funding from a research council in Britain, and that project was concerned with, broadly speaking, with issues in kind of performance expression and models for quantizing complex data so that we could extract timing information and stuff like that. And so I don't know how many people know the work of Peter Dessin and Henk-Jan Honing. They no longer work together, but they worked together as a pair for quite a while, working on some rather brilliant kind of computational models for, in fact, this was a connectionist model for understanding, beat structures in complex auditory data. And I have no background in that kind of computing method at all. I was much more interested in the kind of psychological and, I suppose, musicological problems. When the project started, Peter and Henk-Jan were very, and I was reminded of this actually in your talk, Xavier. Peter and Henk-Jan were very committed to the idea of building a really significant and kind of robust technological platform by which we would be able to achieve a great deal of data processing. And I think with no disrespect to them, I hope, now sort of 30-something years on, a great deal of effort went into building the machine, as it were. And although there were some interesting things that came out of it, many of the questions that I started out with, as the PI on the project, were never really addressed, because the building of the machine took an enormous amount of time and intellectual effort, as your talk today illustrated also, 10 years or more of working towards something. And as you pointed out yourself, the results in some of those areas are, I really admired and enjoyed your honesty about this, that they are small-scale results, and they say very little about rhythm and so on. So this project in late 80s, early 90s really kind of made me think hard about where do you draw the line between building these kind of infrastructures, and when do you turn back to those things that are actually the best MIR technologies that we have in the world, and they are human listeners, who are extraordinarily good MIR technologies, and who, a person like Lara Pearson, who actually I taught as an undergraduate student, so I know her quite well. Lara Pearson would be able to tell, the machine what's going on long before the machine had any idea what was going on. And of course, ethnomusicologists have been using the information that can be directly drawn from, as it were, indigenous people in any musical tradition to tell them what's going on. And so I suppose, I thought your talk really, for me, raised again that question about when do we use that kind of participant observation or, ethnomusicological or qualitative psychological research, and when do we best take advantage of that incredible subtlety that experts have in their own field, and when do we try and build big machines to do it? Of course, the big machines allow us to do certain kinds of things in terms of large amounts of data and reproducibility and certain things that human beings are much less good at, of holding enormous amounts of data in their minds. We're not very good at that. But yeah.
Well, let's turn it back to Xavier then about with this question then, because you are central in the MIR community, but you have also spent a great amount of time on learning to know musicologists and work with musicologists very, very, very deeply, and that's not always the case, I guess, in the MIR community either. I know there have been discussions within the community about how to connect in different ways. What's your general feeling now of the MIR community in terms of involving the other disciplines that surround the musical experience?
Well, the MIR community has two major groups of people: the industry, or the industry-driven people, and the academic-driven people. So clearly the industry is the one that has allowed the community to grow and has allowed to have funding to so a lot of the tasks. So that means that there is a lot of efforts driven to black box driven research and solving problems that, even though you might not understand, that you can have some industrial solutions, and that has worked. I mean, there is a lot of problems that are being addressed and for which there are solutions that solve practical problems that are relevant for society and that we don't understand anything at all. And then, of course, there is the other community that, goes along with that, but of course the emphasis is in music understanding. And music understanding requires architectures, technologies, data that current big AI systems do not have. And for me, it's interesting to realize that in music particular, why do AI systems do not perform some of the tasks that humans can do? For me, sincerely, it's as simple as saying that AI systems do not have access to the data that in other fields AI systems do. Musicological research is not traditionally based on open research. The data that musicology has generated is not accessible to these large corporations. Therefore, AI systems cannot compose sort of at the symbolic level, at the level that other disciplines would be able to write, would be able to make music, would be able to program. So this can be understood as good or bad, but the truth is that very relevant data and very relevant publications and very relevant information that would allow AI systems to be very good at, they cannot, because simply that data is not available. So it's not like we are amazing and our musical brain is very special, but sincerely, I think if the AI systems would have access to all the scores that classical music has generated over the last few centuries, it would be able to do amazing things without understanding anything. And this is sad, but this is a reality. Some of us would believe that, the amount of data required to do that only the big corporations will have, and if we understood and we were able to have quality data, we could do the same task with less data. And that's what many of us are thinking on, no? That it's ecologically not sustainable, socially is not acceptable, and therefore we have to find ways that knowledge is driving the development of AI systems without having to have the large amount of data that is impossible to be sustainable by our society. And that requires knowledge, and that's where musicology, psychology, cognition can be able to bring knowledge to lower the cost, even though it's very pragmatic, but that would allow us to be able to have music understanding systems at a much more efficient manner that what the OpenAI will do, but with huge amount of data. But maybe they don't have access to all the data, even though they're buying it. They're buying it from all the publishers, data that was not available, that is not even available to us. They are now, it's available to them. So.
Let's bring in another perspective. Nikki, you have also not been working perhaps so much with development of technologies, but you have certainly been interested in technologies and their impact on music. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the projects, or a couple of the projects I've been doing over the last 4 years have been working with colleagues in computer science and music technologists, looking at issues around music AI again. And one of the really interesting things, I think, for me, thinking about this collaboration aspect, is that it has been a collaboration which has shown up our different conceptualizations of what music is. And maybe this speaks to your point about what is the knowledge, the expert knowledge, and how is that incorporated. And one of the ways that this is kind of expressed is through the way that, for instance, my computer science colleagues encode music in a sort of transformer model. So making an assistive music generation model with musicians. So we train it on their music, to then create new music or create it in a way that's assistive to the goals that they have. But when we started having conversations, we found these differences in the ways that we understood what was being encoded. And, that they were talking about kind of, properties of music that I would think about as kind of acoustic characteristics or sort of features at some fundamental level. And the idea that there might be musical materials which have a kind of social historical context and a history of use, and my questions that were sort of about, well, where is that in this model? How is that kind of recognized and reproduced and so on? I kind of met with, perhaps unsurprisingly, some confusion, because actually those kinds of ideas about the meaningfulness of music to humans, actually maybe we write about them in academic circles and we talk about them in music criticism, but we don't have a kind of maybe a way of communicating or implementing them within the realm of technology. So when we start, one of the productive things, in other words, of collaborating is it suddenly makes you aware of the things that perhaps you take for granted, that you don't articulate within a discipline, and the difficulties then of communicating with someone collaborating in another discipline when you're using a different language, or in fact you approach the thing with a very different conceptualization of what it constitutes. And the other, the reverse of this, so that was a kind of me with a kind of language and a way of thinking about something that turned out to be a difficult or kind of a conversation to work through. Converse of that was around working with the technologist. So the technologist was training the model, working with the musician partner that we were collaborating with. So the musician would provide, in this case it was MIDI files, so they were providing MIDI files, and we would tune the system, train it on these materials to produce particular outcomes and weight the system so it paid attention to particular aspects of musical materials. And in that process, it became clear to me that actually the music technologist was part of that collaboration, the creative collaboration, and I had perhaps misguidedly gone into it thinking the technologist was somehow serving, delivering something, and actually they were a creative collaborator. So I think, the point for me is that these collaborations around technology, when you have to implement something concrete, suddenly it raises to the surface all of these really interesting ways of thinking about music, about what music means, and about what the very kind of constructs are that we're using.
So Mark, I was thinking when I first read some of your work, that was I think your book from the late 90s, which was more on rule-based systems, which was really quite a lot of AI, I would say, at that time, or in the kind of the start of AI, even though you might not have called it yourself. But then you spent then the last decades or so also on embodiment and psychology, etc., to a much larger extent, but still involving a lot of technology always in all of your work at Ghent University as well. So what's your take on this kind of the crossroads here between these different disciplines?
Actually, I think that we are only at the very beginning of a real development in technology that will give us much more information about what humans really do with music. I still have the impression that with the wonderful tools that we have now, we are still not capable to measure what happens when people interact with music, when the interaction is real. When people are really involved with music, we cannot measure it, I think. And so I am very interested in technologies that would advance this kind of knowledge. And I think it goes in the direction of more sensors, brain measurement techniques, but also computational tools for analysis. I am an adept of statistics, not AI, but statistics is the underlying layer of AI, so maybe later on I will study more the AI. But when I do a statistical analysis, it takes me days or a week to get results. If you work with time series analysis and you do Bayesian statistics, which is the thing to do these days, so you work with sampling engines, right? If we would have a quantum computer, in one moment it would be calculated. And currently, I feel I am at the limit of my analysis methodology because of this computing time it takes. But I am also at the limits of my analysis possibilities because of the data that I get from technologies that are not good enough to do what we want. And what do we want to measure? That's the topic of my little workshop together with Rolf Inge, is what I called, it's the real interaction that the engagement in the music, the absorption in the music, the kind of self-augmentation that you realize through interaction. This is something that, okay, you can ask questions to people and they say, yes, I was in that state, but do you see it in your signals? Hardly. And so this is my main focus to the future in terms of technology progress, I would say.
And you see it in the brain, Peter? That's the big question. Everybody says, well, let's do some brain measurements, right? And then we'll sort it out. But it's not as simple as that, right?
I have to disappoint you. I've been thinking every day since I was 14 how to capture this thing that happens maybe once every half year, where you're suddenly playing and you know it's just there. You got it. 20 seconds later, I didn't get it. So this is this is a really hard question. I think that Robert Sartori was probably, with the idea about the chills, was a really good idea to try to capture that. But since then, it's there's not been much coming out exactly on this. But I think when you ask the question, I think it's important to say that technology has always driven music, the development of music. You think about das Wohltempererte Klavier. You think about the invention of the electric guitar, the invention of the synths, and so forth. So there's always been this interaction between the two things. But in research, there's actually also, if you think about musicology, well, there was the great Danish musicologist Frede B. Nielsen. I don't know if any of you have met him. He was really charismatic, and he really hated the brain science of music. But then Carol Krumhansel got me, sort of pointed me in the direction of an experiment he did many years ago, because music theory, it says we have tension and the release of tension, right? This is basic, very basic thing. But Frede did an experiment where he asked people to squeeze a ball whenever they felt tension, which is kind of a nice idea, which brings together technology, psychology, and musicology, which is basically, I think it still is a really good idea. He kind of dismissed it afterwards, but my point is just that this is something that has always been integrated. The problem is, of course, that if you don't ask, the problem is that technology really often takes over. Because all the things I've seen today and what we do in our center is, of course, well, we have an MR machine, what can we use it for? And this is not how I was taught. You have to figure out a really fantastic or a really good question that is important and maybe also outside of music. And then you have to figure out what would be the best technology to solve this problem and then use it. I think actually that's why I think this ball was a good example, because he was thinking, how can I solve this important problem? And what is often the case is that the more you get into the technology, it becomes the questions, the initial big questions become more irrelevant. So I think that's one thing that I really miss often when I see our own stuff and also other people's stuff. And one thing that I think we have the possibility of doing, and that I really do not understand that we don't get at, is the music pedagogy. If you think about sports science, now there's a lot of money in sports science, and so if you, for instance, think about, I'm a golfer, so I've been playing since I was 10 years old, and there's no golfer on the planet nowadays that don't use the technology. They have these machines where you can see exactly how you actually hit the ball, which angle from all kinds of perspectives. Everybody uses this, and this is the main reason why golfers today hit like 40 yards longer than they used to do. Why don't you see that in music pedagogy for violinists, bass players, and so forth? How can it be that we don't get all of the stuff that we are doing, both, of course, the brain stuff and the psychology, but also the technology into the music pedagogy? I think it's because of the long history of music pedagogy, and it has to be done in a certain way and so forth. But I think there's an opportunity also of making what we do relevant so that we can get funding for what we do. So this is, this is my perspective on it.
It looks like Eric wants to say something about that.
I think it's a really good point. But what I wanted to come back to, I think, was the sort of peak experiences aspect of music research. And although those peak experiences, as you describe, Peter, are amazing when they happen and definitely worth trying to understand, I also think it would be a mistake for the whole of musical investigation to be focused only on those. And I do think that sort of common or garden, everyday musical experience that is much less peaky in its characteristics is just as important, actually, and for different reasons. Partly because it is much more widely shared. I mean, there is the Gabrielson book with strong experiences of music, and there we have the testimony of nearly 1,000 Swedes. Well, there are several million more Swedes who may also, some of them have those peak experiences, but there are plenty of people who also don't feel that music is the most important thing that ever happened in their lives, but who are still involved, engaged in important musical activities. And I think it's equally important that we understand that. And actually, you know, looking at the posters in RITMO today, I'm glad to say in a way that there are plenty that are looking at the sort of common or garden aspects of playing music in a symphony orchestra, and whether you are coordinated or not, and other such things that are part and parcel of, you know, everyday musicking.
Then, now we've spoken a bit about the possibilities and on the crossroads of musicology, psychology, and technology, but also one of the things that we struggle with at RITMO in general, and I know that several of you have also struggled with in your institutions, is also that the disciplinary boundaries that we are locked into in our institutions, and the way kind of hires are made, the funding works, and etc. And then also then there are many PhDs and postdocs sitting here in the room, and probably might also be out there in the world listening to us now. And it's what are your thoughts then about training early career researchers in this field, when we, on one side, we do want to see interdisciplinary or perhaps multidisciplinary types of projects. On the other hand, we also see that the world is still very much focused on disciplinarities, and also that there are different traditions and different needs in these different disciplines. What are your feelings about this tension between the disciplinary and the interdisciplinary?
Well, in the beginning of my career, it was quite difficult to collaborate with somebody from another discipline. But gradually, I have seen it changing. And I must say, since maybe 30 years, it became more and more easy to collaborate with people from engineering, especially in my case, or medicine, or psychology. And now the institution, at least in Ghent, allows you to... so I had many PhD students from different fields, from many different fields. They could do a PhD in musicology, but they could also do a PhD in... That's called an interdisciplinary PhD, where another colleague from engineering would be involved as a co-promoter of the thesis. And I found that a reasonable solution, actually. And over the years, it also becomes easier to do a PhD with different institutions. Also, that's very interesting, because you have different labs, a lab in statistics, a lab in musicology, a lab in whatever. And so it is interdisciplinary and very interesting for students. So I think it changed a lot, but it's important that people have an education in something, that they become experts in it, and then do the interdisciplinary work, I think.
Can I? Oh.
No, please go ahead.
We're all so polite. Yeah, just to second that. So I think co-supervision can work really well at doctoral level, and you can kind of co-design with somebody from another discipline, something that works for that particular student, that, you know, works to their capacities and stretches them, but doesn't end up with, you know, asking them to do something that's just not achievable within the time frame of a PhD, for instance. I think the challenge is at undergraduate level, where you know, as you say, Mark, you're trying to balance getting the expert training, or, you know, the education at the bachelor's level, but you also want people to be able to communicate what they're doing and to be able to collaborate in the future. And that does mean having some, I think, experience with other ways of working and other ways of thinking about music and other disciplines. So, you know, I'm sorry to I'm not going to harp on about AI, it's just everywhere, isn't it? I'm so sorry. But that is the obvious example at the moment, would be, what does a music student, bachelor's musicology student need to know about AI, given that the world that they're going to be practicing in is, you know, they're going to need certain skills. And that might not be they need to be an expert coder, but they certainly need to know how that music is made, so that they can protect their rights or their music, or all the other kinds of questions that I was going to be involved in. So I'll
Yeah, I agree with that. It's clear that there is a cultural context, or there are many cultural contexts, and the concept of interdisciplinary is very much tied with that. In the US, there is a particular way of liberal arts that allows very easy interdisciplinarity. In the UK, maybe easier, also in Netherlands. In continental Europe, it's very disciplinary driven, and that makes it hard. But I agree this idea that that undergraduate, I think, should be very much disciplinary oriented, or at least methodologically oriented, in the sense that I think you have to sort of develop the skills of a particular way of looking at the world, a particular way of either being experimental science, being hardcore, I don't know, mathematical or artistic or engineering, and you have to go through all of that. Even though with all the current technology, I think less and less. But so I think we have the tendency, even though in many universities that they would like to start with an undergraduate interdisciplinarity, and I don't see that, and I think it's not. So interdisciplinary, I think, is very good at master's and PhD, but it has to be formalized. And PhD level, I don't think there is, at least in our context, there is no education. So then the only level of education that allows to the really formal education in an interdisciplinary manner, I think is at the master's level. So for me, it's strategic to have a very strong master's program that allows to have people from different backgrounds to join and to be able to develop their skills that may not have had in their undergraduate and complement that, and focus on project-based and team-based education. And that's not that easy to have, and I think one of our successes precisely has been on that, on developing a strong master's program that allows, even though it's engineering focused, but allows, we have always tried to be able to accept people from other disciplines if they have the minimum background in engineering, and that has allowed to train people with that are good at being active in quite a number of topics, not just the engineering one. And nowadays, with of course the development of AI and maturity of all these tools, it's so much easier for people coming from other disciplines to be able to use those tools, and doesn't require to have an undergraduate program. It doesn't know how, you don't know how to, you don't need to know how to program. I mean, you can really, I mean, for me, in fact, this is the first discipline, programming, that AI is basically converting into an obsolete discipline, which is amazing. And when you think about it, the reason why is because there is more open software than any other area of discipline. So all these big companies have benefit from open software, from all the people that have willingly shared all their code. And so is the area that there is more open data without any copyright or any complex issues around that. So now we have AIs that can perfectly do amazing programming, and that sincerely can perfectly do master level theses on this technological area. So the people that have developed this area are the ones that are becoming more obsolete, because they are the ones that have developed the data and have developed the context that AI systems can learn from. So in that sense, for me, it's amazing. But that makes it that precisely that discipline is less strategic than what it used to be before. So technology, if it's well presented at the master's level, people from other disciplines can be able to do, and it can really be a sort of a very transversal area. Of course, it has to be taught properly, but I think so it's easier to do interdisciplinary work, at least from the technological side, than what it used to be some years ago. And I think that's very good, and it has to be approached correctly, and we have to develop educational systems that support that. But yeah.
Peter, and then we'll open for questions from the floor or from the audience.
Yeah,
I just want to say one thing. And, the thing is that I think most people agree that many of the big discoveries come from interdisciplinary work. And but the problem is that funding systems don't usually, at least in Denmark, do not see it like this. It's really hard to get funding for interdisciplinary work because we don't have an interdisciplinary board to send it to. So that's one thing that should be addressed at a higher political level, I think. But just to give you an example of interdisciplinary research, I think it's also, now I can say that I have the most interdisciplinary background I don't offend anybody by saying this, but you know, back in the day, people were more like me in the sense that I've studied French and mathematics and brain science and music and so forth. But if you think about back in the day, of course, Leonardo da Vinci, he did all sorts of stuff, and he sort of made the groundwork for our understanding of human physiology and so forth. But I was just last week for this seminar of August Krogh, a Danish physician who got the Nobel Prize in '33. And so that was his main thing with the lung. There was something with the lungs, how they work. And but he was also into all sorts of other research, animal research, and he was the first to develop a method to measure CO2 from the atmosphere. And he wrote back before 1900, he wrote, yeah, and if I did some calculation, and it showed that actually the world would be a ball of ice, and apparently it isn't, and the only explanation I can come up with is that there's this CO2 level in the atmosphere that sort of, he called it the heating effect, not but the heating effect he called it. And then he wrote, I think with all the coal that we are burning at the moment, somebody should actually do some systematic measurements of this, because it might become a problem in the future if it actually regulates the temperature. Well, that was before 1900, but just to say that these discoveries, I think it's important also for students, PhD students, to be confronted, or no, not PhD students, bachelor students to be confronted with different disciplines early in their career and get a taste for how to bring these things together.
Any questions from out here now, when you have this distinguished panel to ask questions to? And then I need help with moving the microphone. Anne, perhaps, could you help with...
Hello. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to, if you would allow me to indulge a bit, I'm reading I have read an essay by Alva Noe, the philosopher. It's called Rage Against the Machine. And seeing as you opened the AI box, I'll just continue a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you a question at the end. So Alva Noe, he encourages us to rage against the machine. So what he says is that, for example, you know, that human consciousness is not the same as AI consciousness. We need to think about that very hard. For example, AIs are trained up on large data sets. Human beings aren't trained up, but have experience. Humans, for example, don't learn a language by generating the next token. Learning a language is, and then I quote, learning to work, play, eat, love, flirt, dance, fight, pray, manipulate, negotiate, pretend, invent, and think. So he's encouraging us to kind of resist, for example, to think about how thinking is resisting, so AIs can't think. So I guess here's the question. We've talked about accessibility and the value of generating larger data sets to train AIs. So I wonder if I could invite you to reflect on the value of the knowledge that cannot be measured, the non-quantifiable, so the knowledge that explains human experience. Thank you.
Anyone up for that one? Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the challenge that Noah sets is to do with what some people put together as 4E cognition. So the embedded and enacted and extended and embodied nature of what it is that human beings do and know, and that extends out into. I was talking with Rainer over his very interesting poster about what do we call culture? What is culture in cross-cultural music work? And as his, I hope he won't mind me quoting him, but as his poster points out, he has there's one of the titles on his poster is culture as biology. So that intertwining or entanglement of culture with biological systems, that complete sort of entanglement of them, is indeed a challenge to any kind of approach to I don't know how to put it, simulating, let's say, human consciousness in a system that doesn't have as ready access to that cultural, I'm going to use the word scaffolding, but scaffolding is actually the wrong metaphor in some ways, but nonetheless, that doesn't have access to that cultural scaffolding as part of the, again, we have to call it data that it would be working on. I mean, in principle, I suppose you could say, could one imagine a system that did have access to that ramified and finely wrought kind of information that would represent? I kind of think perhaps in principle it could, but in practice it seems extremely unlikely. And of course, it's a completely it would be an utterly dynamic system that was always changing, and that was changed by the organism as it behaved in that cultural world.
Well, let me comment on related to the AI issue, and all throughout history, it's clear that technology has changed music, and now it's clearly a very clear case. No, but sometimes we kind of give it for granted, and it's clear that notation changed completely music, and people started thinking of music as being a piece of paper. And the recording made an amazing bad contribution to music, in the sense of, for most people still now, a recording is music. And that's clearly very far from. But we have accepted it, and all of us have accepted it. And now AI is clearly having even a bigger impact. That, of course, we are, especially in Western culture, this idea of things we need to touch it has to be an artifact, it has to be analyzed. And academics, we are helping to support that, because we need to freeze things and be able to analyze things as an object. And clearly, many human phenomena are not that, but academics and technology have promoted these ideas of freezing or conceptualizing or music, human phenomena to something that are concrete. And AI is the extreme case. Of course, it's all data, and these are going to be what music is, and we're going to adapt, and we're going to adapt to that. And we have to revolve, but we had to revolve also. Some, like in India, many people, of course, they revolted against notation. It was never accepted. Many people still revolt against recording, and they don't accept to record and consider that music is a recording. And of course, many people should revolt with AI. But I don't see that so differently from our past errors and past mistakes of what we have done to music. Huh?
Okay. I think the other thing as well, that was such a fantastic quote, Nanette, and really thought-provoking. Thank you. The other thing about raging against the machine suggests that it has no human, and that it kind of exists in a void. And of course, there are always humans, even when there are machines. So it's about recognizing that, isn't it? It's about recognizing where is the human in that machine, or in the assemblage. You know, we've been talking about music, but this idea of music, what we talk about is music as being an assemblage, as being a social and technological and whatever thing. It suggests that therefore we can't, as it were, rage against the machine. We have to recognise that AI or any other kinds of technologies are part of that social and political and economic environment of which they are very much a part, and therefore we can't lose sight of that, because otherwise, we do become powerless because we fail to see where it is that we can intervene.
Mark, did you also have a?
Yes, personally, I'm not so impressed by what AI, let's say, how it works. That it can have a big impact on us, yes, but the way it works, I remember that I was actually in the end of the 80s implementing an algorithm that I read, and one of the authors was Geoffrey Hinton. It was about backpropagation. So backpropagation was something that we could easily implement. It's a half a page of code, but we had no data. And so it was not so very useful for me to apply it to music because we had no data. Now there are data, and so these algorithms work. That's basically the idea. But much of what people experience in their life cannot be represented as data. So a lot of things that we experience, if we cannot represent them as data, those AI systems cannot learn it and cannot know it. So that those things are related to the human embodiment, to the way we feel, how we move in space, the things that cannot easily turn into something that is a representation from which machines could learn. But maybe there are solutions to it, or some certain things that you still can do. But in the end, what the machine does is mimicry. It mimics us. It's not the real stuff, but it mimics us. But still, it can have a big impact. So that's a bit my
need to fight for the microphone.
This is I mean, I agree with that, but the reality now is that most human communication happens by texting on social networks nowadays. So most human expression happens through that. And that's the data that AI is feeding from. So strictly speaking, AI is being fed by most of the source of information that most people communicate and express their emotions through. So that's for me the big impact of what is really happening now, both in the negative and positive sense, that they really are capturing the human expression, emotion, reality that most people have. And so I would not completely agree that they are not capturing our human activity, because the reality is that most people, a big percentage of their human activity is text-based online. And that's a big part of what AI is really feeding from.
I think Peter also wanted to...
But for that, I'll just say that I don't know if I should say problem with the AI. I mean, I'm not a big. I don't know much about it. But my problem is a little bit that you are substituting one black box with another one. Because if you think about a lot of the algorithms that we have produced over the time in music, for instance, Marcus Peer's idiom system, you actually from that you learn something about how the brain must function. But by using AI, you don't really learn about how in that sense, because you don't, like Marcus Peer's idiom model, of course, it tells us, well, there are statistics to the sequence that you've had before, and that will determine your perception of the next node, how surprised you are or not surprised, and so forth. And that's harder with the AI system because it's a black box in a certain way. You can probably say this. And then I'll just end by saying I think that Rage Machine was originally not Rage Against AI, but a printer. So. Most hated machine ever.
But the brain is a black box.
Yeah, that's
okay,
what I'm
so
saying. You have a black box, I don't understand.
So the brain is a black box. What is not black box is all the interfaces we have developed along with the brain. And so all these LLMs, I mean, all these big language models, we are reaching the size of brain level number of neurons. I mean, we are at the level of 100 billion, 100,000 million parameters. That's the complexity-wise, we are reaching the level or surpassing the level of the brain. The intelligence and what the interesting things that is happening is not at this black box level, but at the interaction level and all the analysis that also requires kind of going deep on trying to explain these black boxes, as we have always done with the brain. So it's not that different from having a brain that we have no idea what he has learned, we have no idea what he has been exposed, is able to find patterns, and then the smart part is at the interface and how it interacts with the world. And that's what the interesting parts are. So I think it's not that different.
Yes, so we have two things now. We have this black box thing, which is not only the brain, but the entire human body. And then we have the expressions. And the machine can capture the expressions and maybe do a guess about what is happening inside. But this doesn't it open a little bit of a, let's say, a little bit of a positive thing in the sense that this machine is not developing this black box, right? This machine is processing the patterns that our hidden structure is producing. And so we are a little bit in advance of the machine, because the machine doesn't have this underlying layer. We do have this underlying layer. And so that means that we can come up with new expressions that the machine can't. Human new expressions, like musical patterns that you produce, intonations, gestural things that the machine can't do because it doesn't have this body and this interaction with the world.
I think Eric, you had a hand up there. But, oh yeah, with the world. Well, it's given the kind of the lengthy answer to that one. I'm not sure how much more time we have. We can do one more, perhaps short. Well, the answer, the question can be short and the answer can be long. Let's anyone with any questions.
I just want to pick up on a little thread that Eric dropped, which is the music of the everyday. When we talk about things like AI, often we're focusing on a particular function and use of music. That's not all of it. But what aspect of music should we be focusing on that's not necessarily the recording sphere, the MIDI files that survive, the stems that are available? What aspect of music are we missing that is part of our everyday, that we should be using technology to find?
And now we take the short answers.
It's only my personal interest. It's improvisation, because I think that is the most underexplored and with the worst paradigms being used for it, and with a lot of potential also in understanding human creativity.
I agree.
Group ubiquitous music making.
For me, it's musicking. I mean, the idea is that we are all guilty of converting music into an object, into a frozen thing. And that's been driven by the industry, by everything, and we have all contributed. And that's essentially now is evident with the AI that that's not the way to go. The way to go in music is the expression of a person, and it's the process that matters. And all the legal framework that has a big problem in changing has to move from the object to the copyright of the object to the copyright of the person and of the creativity itself. And clearly, for me, that's where the things should be going. But it's the same idea. But
I would agree with that, with the sole exception, perhaps, of saying that I think music is not so much an expression of a person as an expression of a collectivity. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
but money-making wise, are you
I think we will probably end it there. Thanks a lot to the panel for this lively discussion. That ends the program of Largo today. Thanks to everyone joining here in person. Thanks to everyone out there in the world. And I should also say that these members of the RITMO Scientific Advisory Board will be with us for a couple of more days. So there are various other smaller events happening in the coming days. So if you're interested in any of those, then check at the bottom of the Largo webpage then for more details about those. But with that, thanks a lot for this session.